Oh, yeah, a cup of coffee to the working man. Hey, it's B Sizzle. Breakfast with your boy BC here on Campbell's Rambles Thursday morning, August 21st to the 25th. I know. No pre-fight announcement that this was going to happen. No smoke screens out there. It was sort of an impromptu get together to see who's awake, see who's out here. I got a busy chock full scheduled day here on this Thursday. So getting in a little morning ramble for those who have woken up hardcore, not morning wood. I really wasn't going in that direction, but super early. I know the Canadians are here. Marc-Andre Barrial, thank you, sir. Super early. This week sucks content wise. Yeah, I guess it does, right? There we go. Hope everybody's doing well. Shout out to Street. Yeah, Chinchilla in the house. Probably going to see some of our favorites jump in here at the last minute, but I hope you're doing well. All right, I am here on this rainy Thursday Connecticut morning. You know, yeah, I mean, technical thrillers and all. Thank you so much, Rally Sport. Let's get an update on life. All right, how we doing here? Big win for your boy BC. All right, put in that mailbox 2 days ago, all by myself. All right, only took me 3 hours. Dug the hole, poured the concrete. I mean, even at 47, you can shock yourselves and surprise yourself. I swore I was going to screw that up, but I mean, look, is it 12 inches or so further away from the road than it should be? Probably. Is it on an awkward angle? Probably. But you know what? The job got done. So there you go. Big week for homeowners, indeed. We are going to chat a little bit today about mixed martial arts, boxing, mental health, 90s, NBA, 70s vinyl, or whatever the hell is on your mind for us early risers. I don't know what time zone. I mean, it's Wednesday at 4 Eastern somewhere right now, right? So that's why we're doing it right here. It is UFC Shanghai Fight Week. It is a few other things. I think we even got some PFL tonight. So they're still rolling out them tournaments. You can check that out. Marc-Andre still with us here. I saw a CT license plate in Quebec City yesterday. Was it UBC? No, it was not me with my fellow Quebecois, although I really, really want to go to Quebec City for the damn Winterfest thing that my wife's always telling me about. So that's on the trip list. But shout out to Quebec. Shout out to the ancestry there, right? Shout out all the way around. What else we got? MK will be, of course, back Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern on those YouTubes. A nice remote episode setting the stage for the weekend, reacting to all these big announcements this week. I'll be touching on a few of those today. All La Leyendas are welcome to this chat. Thank you so much, Street. You can call yourself a matador. The rest of us, though, are legends. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Reggie the Goat sleeping upstairs. You probably won't see him, although Zoe's been making a run lately for airtime. I mean, I had to pin my door yesterday because I had an early CBS Sports HQ hit. She was sleeping on the office bed. As soon as the camera turned on and we went live, she came running, and I'm stiff arming her, while trying to prop this microphone up. So for my evening HQ hit, I'm like, I'm gonna show Zoe what's up. Okay. So I put a lot of crap behind the door to pin it. And she got a running start and popped it open with a headbutt. I mean, that is just, absolute dedication to this. Okay. Did you see the shop? Dude, I cannot even believe this is real. Like, I'm just waiting for the Reddit, the Reddit one-liner at the end that like, is this really happening? Are we really rewinding this much, right? Oh my God. But who can we clown in this case? I'm not only a Just for Men hair club president, I'm also a client in that regard. So if I can start using the rewind and get a little more shabby, yeah, that is redacted indeed. Wow. So good, right? That's what I'm talking about. Good morning as well to Kevin Holland Oates. Yeah, I love that guy. Kevin Holland Oates. There we go. That's a good one. Hopefully you put some of that extra Irish in the coffee. McGregor style. There we go. All right. That's weird. Great stuff. Also this week on the channel, of course, I hope you caught Inside the Box yesterday with Rafe Boogs and myself reacting to Moses Atama's breakthrough win. We hit that breaking news of Jake Tank right as it landed, and also Rafe's epic, and I do mean epic, rant related to his dream White House boxing card on the South Lawn is something that can't can't be denied, can't be missed. Just Bleed Radio in the house with Lazy Bed. Yeah, I do guarantee you're going to like the way it looks on you. Wow. Yeah, I mean, well, LT's been walking into a lot of accidental Reddits lately, a lot of accidental Shabanese, you know what I mean? It drives me nuts, right? Like that kind of stuff right there. I don't think LT realizes that he's walking in a spider web in those moments, but just the same, leave a message and I'll call you back. Tell me about it, Rally Sports. I can't believe that Jake Tank is real. What a joke. You're now currently preaching to a choir of two, you and I. Thank you very much. Abdul Latif, appreciate you, and Sharif Abdur Rahim, also a big fan of both. Thank you so much. Morning to you. But very underrated player. We used to always say like great scorer on a shitty team, but go back and like watch the Sharif Abdur Rahim highlight, reels from the career. Don't forget that he was a 22 point per game All-Star on the Atlanta Hawks. And don't forget that I somehow own 3 Sharif Abdur Rahim replica jerseys, including the weird alternate Vancouver Grizzly one that they had that one time. It just happened. I fell into it. All right. There it is. We're going to have a lot of talk today about all these things and more. Not so much about breast milk, but Mr. C says I started my first cycle of breast milk under Papa Zoo, and I already feel like I could headline a $60 pay-per-view against a can. Yeah, shout out to Aussie Boxing yesterday morning. I mean, you thought this breakfast with BC chat was hastily thrown together with no marketing. How about that pay-per-view with the stripper Michael Zarafa KOing a man who probably set up the ring? So there you go. There it is. And look, boxing is it's rough right now. It got rough out of nowhere. What the hell's going on in my sport? I mean, really, I guess maybe it is Dana White to fix everything. I mean, I don't know what is going on in the box. American boxing's dead. A lot of weird shit. But if you're joining me from underneath the sheets, keep it clean in there. Thank you very much. And Lazy Bed, don't we know it, Robert Pack? You want to talk about, like if it was late at night and you were deep in the 8th row and you're on YouTube killing time, or maybe you got the headphones on listening to the, absolutely epic Jethro Tull album Thick as a Brick while you're watching highlights with no sound on them, and you throw on Robert Pack's highlights and you're like, I remember that 6'1" guard from UFC, but then you forget how many times he dunked in the face of some of the biggest shot blockers in the game. He's one of my favorite dunkers from the 90s because not only was he short in stature, but he had this extra gear. Like, you remember that dunk, the famous dunk, when Tom Chambers dunked over Mark Jackson in Phoenix, that two-hander where he bumped into Mark and then went up another gear. It was like rookie Dwight Gooden throwing those fastballs that used to look like they rose at the end. Robert Pack had the greatest, like, I've already hit the peak of my jump, but here's a little bit more that I've ever seen for certainly someone his size or in general. Thank you. A little bit of 90s NBA yeah, I mean, you're right, Lazy, but he would yam it directly on your head. There we go. Rod Strickland was definitely a problem. Jay Fish, we're going to get to that. Let's start off at the top here. Oh, a bit BCX updates. We got some interviews coming as well. I got Paul Hughes today. I got Corey Anderson. I got some big names coming up here. Okay. So big topics, big guests. Actor Eric Roberts. We just talked yesterday about the fantastic 1989 cult classic martial arts movie, Best of the Best. So get ready for a little BCX in your future. There we go. There it is. Whoomp, in fact. There it is. All right, my first topic is, this UFC Vancouver card coming together like a hot sandwich, right? Has anyone ever said that before? Coming together right now. It's going to go down. Let's get this date right. October 18th in Rogers Arena in Vancouver, home of CBS Sports' Shaquille Maljuti. Big fan of that guy, the Shaq Attack. The card is awesome when you take into totality what we know already. And the highlights, of course, Manon Fiorot, Jasmine Jasdavicius, Marlon Vera versus Ariel Helwani Zahabi, Kevin Holland, Mike Malott. But this main event, which is the beginning of us really figuring out what the next step is in the middleweight division post Khamzat Chimaev absolute wrestling takeover, chest to chest driving Luke Thomas nuts. It is Renier de Ridder against Fluffy Hernandez. Now, the interesting thing was, people have said after this Chimaev just absolutely owning DDP. Like who's out there who actually could either deal with this style or force him to fight like we've seen him fight in other fights where he wasn't fighting someone. Look, the reason why that fight went so long and was so weird, yeah, Chimaev wasn't necessarily going for the finish. I believe he was keeping that gas tank fresh. I also believe he was like, I can do this easily because this guy has a deficient ground game plus the combination of stamina and toughness to not get finished. That's not going to be every fight. Either guys are going to succumb to Chimaev's top pressure or they're going to force him to fight, like Gilbert Burns did, although I think Chimaev was a willing partner in that regard, or maybe even like Kamaru Usman did. But without question, on the very knee-jerk reaction of whose style could cancel or give problems to what we saw Chimaev do against DDP, it's obviously RDR, the Dutch Knight, with that submission game and that size and that awkwardness, or Anthony Hernandez with the gas tank, the meanness, the combination of wrestling and crazy stamina in the striking game. Now they're going to fight each other. And the fact that Dana White in his video announcing this yesterday has presented this as basically a semifinals to create the new title challenger. I like it. I mean, it's no different than whoever looks good in the next big fight is going to get the call because it's not a tournament. The winners aren't going to face off. It's still whoever looks better, but at least there's a little more structure. RDR and Fluffy are going to have to go through each other and look impressive doing it, just like coming up in September in Paris. Nasruddin Imavov and Caio Borralho will have to do the same thing. So we got a little bit closer to the understanding of where this division is going, and that group of somewhat evenly matched and deserved contenders are going to need not one more win, but one more win with a spectacular edge to it, a finish, a something. So this is exciting because this middleweight division is deep. Deep in names, at least. A lot of those names are on the come down, of course, Whitaker, Adesanya, to some degree Strickland too, but I like where this is going. I love to see a loaded fight night card. Normally the only people that get that are, Azerbaijan or Dubai, or the people that are going to pay a ton of money. I don't know what Vancouver's site fee was, but it's great to see that this is going to happen. And talk about a matchup that you just don't know what it's going to look like, but you have to see it. To me, that's RDR versus Fluffy. It's going to be a wild fight. Fluffy's going to try to guess this guy out in every possible way. RDR can potentially either cancel him out or have a threat of his own in defense from his back on the ground if he gets taken down. And then let's not forget what RDR has added from fight 1 in the UFC, where he went like life or death with GM3, to fight 4 when he just did what he did over 5 rounds against Robert Whitaker. It's like we've seen almost an evolution of his game where now he's pretty damn dangerous if you shoot on him. He's got those big knees. He's got a few things going on. So, Jay Fish asked an interesting question. If RDR wins this fight, not only would he secure a title shot, he'd be 5-0 in the UFC. I don't know if those were all this calendar year. Didn't he officially have one at the end of last year, or am I wrong? Let's bring in the RDR wiki page and get down to the bottom of this. Let's get down together. All right, here we go. The 34-year-old RDR made that UFC debut against GM3 in November of last year. So if he did this calendar year, if we're talking fighter of the year, he would have submitted Kevin Holland in round 1, beat the bags off of Bo Nickel and kind of exposed him and stopped him in round 2, outlast Robert Whitaker by split decision in a very good fight. And then if he gets this done, presumably knock off 8-fight win streaking Fluffy to secure a title shot. It's fight of the year consideration without question. In fact, maybe even finalist. It is hard, though, to be fair, to win fight of the year when you don't win the championship or there isn't, this is close. He's becoming pretty close, but if Merab beats Sandhagen and now has 3 title defenses, and those names are O'Malley, Umar Nurmagomedov, and he goes for a 4th in December, it's going to be tough to beat that. But RDR in 4 wins going back to November, good Lord, over a 12-month stretch, that's going to be absolutely ridiculous if he pulls that off. So shout out to that guy. And an interesting question related to this from Mr. C, the informal spectator. I like to see this guy when he gets formal, buttoned up, a little bit of a bow tie action. Whose striking would you rate higher, RDRs or Hamzat. I think Hamzat without question, even though Hamzat, as we mentioned on MK, it's a little bit basic. It's a little bit jab set up the right hand. There's not a lot of nuance to it, but he is a dog. He does fight at a high pace. He certainly can handle himself and use the striking to set up the wrestling, like in other matchups where he's had to. He didn't have to in this matchup because at the beginning of each round, he sort of, circled and then made that huge run to get the takedown. RDR's striking, which was almost not there against Mearshart in his debut. Neither was his head movement at the time. It's come on quickly, and it's not that he didn't have it already. I mean, I watched his one championship run there, but he's found a way to make it dangerously awkward is the best way to say it, because when he leads with those almost leaping power jabs, his technique's all over the place, but he's long, he's big, he's awkward, he's surprising. So yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. All right. Thank you. Let's stay on this topic with Picks Marshmallows. Boars contenders need to copy Kadirov's fighting style to have an advantage. Does that mean firearms or eliminating homosexuals? I mean, where are you going with this? It was sort of interesting to see this sport this week, and a lot of people commented on Twitter that MMA gave us Chimaev walking off a plane, giving the title to Kadyrov, and everyone's happy in Chechnya, to that guy on the Contender Series who has that history of racist videos coming out and cutting promos that are somewhere between Colby Covington and Hulk Hogan. Yeah, what a week for the sport there. Big Papa, Key Papa, I don't know much about time zones, but it seems like it might be 3 a.m. where you are, and you might be lonely, but thank you for joining. Hopefully they can get BJ and his mom's situation worked out on your set of islands there. And no, I don't need you to bare hand fight Daz necessarily for Mahalo, respect over there at the Lava Shack, but MK Promotions, Factory Town Promotions would be a big backer in that. A little bit of throwback BC here from Neil Steele. I was listening to the Getting Over Wrestling podcast with Adam Silverstein, one of my colleagues at CBS Sports, and apparently BC and him used to co-host back in the day. No wonder BC has so much wrestling knowledge. Well, I had that wrestling knowledge before that guy, but yes, we, Adam and I were, when I started at CBS Sports in 2017, I rolled out what initially was the, what the hell did I call that? The In This Corner podcast. Then we got copyright sued, and then we had to change that to the State of Combat. But yes, I did a boxing, mixed martial arts, and pro wrestling podcast, 2 hours each sport each week, not to mention recap podcasts. I'll say this though, and I did a fun one there, the pro wrestling one with Adam Silverstein, also Nick Costos, who is big time into sports gambling, radio shows, and that kind of stuff. A great talent. He ended up leaving the company, so it was Adam and I, the Silver King, for a long time. That run, when I left ESPN, went to CBS, and then for like 3 years, basically was podcasting what seemed like 12 hours a day. I really think that was one of the greatest stretches for my career of just reps improving me, having like a ridiculous amount of reps. It's hard to get great at something when you're doing, let's say, one hit a week on camera, or you're calling fights once a month. It's hard to stay fresh and improve. But when you're podcasting every day for 2 hours, it just creates a flow and a confidence in you. But I had a good run on those wrestling podcast days. I'm just very happy to not have to consume the amount of wrestling content that I used to per week to try to make that the best wrestling podcast in the world. That is ultimately what took my soul from me. Yeah, my pro wrestling soul. It was crushed. So there you go. There it is. All right. Let's go to my second topic before I open the floor exclusively to us BC with breakfast fans right here, or maybe it's the other way around. My regrets from Jake Take being announced. What do we got here? Friday, November 14th, Atlanta, State Farm Arena, I believe, and on Netflix. It will be Jake Paul with a 66-pound weight advantage, potentially an 8-inch height advantage, an 8.5-inch reach advantage, taking on lightweight champion Gervonta Tank Davis. Hate it. Really hate it. Really hate it a lot. Shout out to the Loco Moco in the hands of Big Papa right there on the island. I hate it most. I mean, there's competing reasons why I hate it. You know what I mean? It's like, am I trying to stop Tank from getting a paycheck? No. But like, this has been a weird, tumultuous year for Tank as a boxer, a fighter that the sport, outside of his various missteps outside the ring, sort of needs inside the ring, needs boxing, American boxing, which is suffering so bad right now in the Turkey era. It's one of those byproducts we get from Turkey. Usyk Fury series, better be a B-Vol. We get these Times Square tennis stadium cards. I mean, we've gotten some big good stuff, some big goods here from Turkey, but the fallout in a lot of ways is the death of American boxing. And to have American boxing's biggest star talk about retirement this year, then take a fight against Lamont Roach Jr. that a lot of people thought misguidingly that it was going to be some walkthrough, struggles to get a draw he really didn't deserve, including the big misstep from the New York State Commission with the knee and the knockdown that would have officially given Roach the win. Then has a serious domestic violence setback, which it looked like it was setting him up for legit prison time. The charges get dropped by the mother of his children. And now, instead of giving Roach that big rematch, instead of fighting Shakur Stevenson, we're gonna box Jake Paul in a weird exhibition. And it's like, even if this fight ends up being the opposite of our fears being that it's another Jake Paul Tyson fight where it's like, I mean, that fight wasn't an exhibition and should have been, but it still had all the exhibition feels of, we're going to prop up this nearly 60-year-old man and, get him to the finish so we can raise his arm and show his ass. Right. I mean, it was just, it sucked to me from what that did to boxing. You're pulling in all of those casuals that only come around every couple of years for the really big ones. And this is the one you're serving them. Why would I watch boxing again after that? And it took a hit on Jake's reputation, got him a lot of attention, got him a lot of money, helped him build that relationship with Netflix. I'm not dogging on that, but it's like every other word out of Jake is, I'm looking to fight the biggest celebrity. Oh no, I'm looking to fight Anthony Joshua, Canelo, or fight for a cruiserweight title. So to see him fight a fight like this that essentially means nothing, and that even if it ends up being oddly competitive in how hard they actually go, what are we winning here? We're just winning, I guess, attention and money. And that's where we are at in boxing, where shit's all over the place. It's as segregated and oddly broken and weird as it's ever been, yet is on the verge of like forced organization, for better or worse. And we still have this crossover bubble that won't go away, but only it's super tired right now. Like we've seen, there was one Maymac. It was great. It changed a lot. We saw some weird derivatives come out of there. We saw, that quick run on Triller where they're putting old guys together and Jake Paul's rising. And, the Tyson Roy Jones exhibition turned out to actually be legit entertainment and drew big money in a non-pay-per-view era and in big pay-per-view buys too. But the constant derivative since then, and Jake Paul, I'll give him credit for that rise of fighting old MMA names after each other and kind of becoming semi, legit. And I know he did try to get, Tommy Fury in there for a rematch and Fury turned it down for big money. I know he did try to get Canelo and AJ and it didn't ultimately work out for him, but I don't know who this fight is for outside of non-boxing fans that you're trying to, throw that fishing rod on and pull them into Netflix and watching, and say, okay, it's fine. Make that money player. But in an already fractured American boxing scene where boxing could use this American star, where PBC could, in all theory, really use a Tank versus Roach rematch or Tank versus Pacquiao or what have you, we're going to get Tank versus Jake. And it's not just that, I potentially lose a chance in a payday to call a big Tank fight. That's really not my focus in this one, although that also adds to the reality of it. But damn, it's just like, this is where we're at in 25. This is where Tank's career is at right now. Don't want it. Don't need it. Stop the madness. Maybe that's just me. But I think at some point we've all had enough of the crossover circus. I'm not blaming Jake for it. He's just the one that puffed up the balloon enough to keep it going, to keep life in there. But like, you went from Mike Tyson to Chavez Jr. now to A lightweight. I like, what are we doing? What the hell are we doing here? Back to Key Papa, as I just sit here and complain with you all on this morning. My second coffee cup of the day. It's one of them days. Okay, don't take it personal. It's 3 a.m. here, BC. Just got off work. And when's Rocco Siffredi? Rocco's not coming to MK, but we do honor the legend that is that man's South Pole. 3 a.m. in Hawaii. Getting out of the job and getting on with BC there. Shout out to Key Papa, Big Papa. There we go, right there. All right, let's see what else we got here. Those ultimately were my two topics here. We dusted through them quickly. If you got follow-ups, hit me for that. But we will open the floor to your questions for as long as this thing lasts this morning. And also, super chat is open. It's a grift. We all know this, but you wanna support the show. It is available. BC appreciates that. Thank you very, very much. All right. Let's start off here with Matthew Garrett. MG, they call him in some parts, right? Thank you, sir, for the kind support of this show. Thoughts on Luke's political takes? Luke Thomas, I assume you're saying, unless Luke Nocita just launched a podcast about that. I don't know. Driving viewers away from MK. It's been hard. We love the MMA takes, but when it goes into that arena, which a lot of MMA fandom is conservative, it's difficult. I understand that. I do. Did we want MK to become a house of politics? No, that was never, the idea. It was never the idea to take stances or aggressively get on certain topics that will ultimately alienate your audience. It's not, just from the standpoint of Michael Jordan saying that Republicans buy sneakers too, which is why he didn't take, truly hard stances in his career. I just think, like, in a lot of ways, shows like MK or sports in general on TV, combat sports, should be an oasis from politics. I think obviously the biggest problem here was not only did we have something like the COVID pandemic that just threw a kind of curveball in this era of our lives that, like, we haven't had to deal with before, at least not in the States. I know people in other countries have had to deal with wars and craziness that this era of US living hasn't. So that did produce opinions and reactions that were heavy-handed. And were some of those right? Were some of those wrong? I mean, I don't know. But at the time, we did what we had to do. We were still putting out shows. Actually, I think we were ahead of the game during that stretch. And if COVID opinions turned people off during that stretch, that's fine. We were trying to do the best that we could with information we had. But I think what people are really talking about now is Luke's fairly aggressive turn into politics, all the way up to him, congrats to him starting his own political spinoff channel that's doing very well. And I'm very happy for him, because I know as a creator, you want to be making the type of content that really speaks to you and has a message and matters. And that's that for Luke, but has political opinions that aren't all Luke, by the way, right? Because I've also spoken my mind openly on things in the past couple of years. Has that alienated our fan base to some degree? Probably. But the point I'm trying to make with this long way of circling back is to say that I have never imagined a scenario where politics were so front and center in combat sports. And it's not just, Trump getting the walk into the arenas in the UFC, or Dana going to the conventions and speaking, I mean, that's just fine, whatever. But the fact that you're forcefully bringing it into combat sports now, in WWE now, obviously in UFC, and, people are making gimmicks, MMA related gimmicks like Colby Covington about it. And on top of that, you're seeing how much relationships with politics are aiding certain people in combat sports to get certain things approved or pushed through. I mean, it's really hard to avoid that. I typically through the years try to stay out of politics. I hate politics. I don't trust either side. There are times that you got to pick the lesser of two evils in some form, but I even learned that the hard way in certain elections. I don't even want to play that game. But there's been shit going on in the last couple of years that is just in our fight game, unavoidable. And I think on top of that, there's been almost some unprecedented stuff going around that it's sometimes hard to be you without sharing that to some degree. There have been conversations at time behind the scenes, like, are we becoming the old guys on the porch saying, what's with the matchmaking? There's too much Trump on my TV, blah, blah, blah. Probably at times, but we're also really passionate combat sports fans who do this for a living because of that passion, who are at the same time are, two guys that I think we value our own opinions. We value the platforms we've been given these opinions. And it's if we want to be a show that's real, if we want to be a show that tells at least our truth, and I don't mean our truth, Ron Killings from WWE, but our truth, it's going to happen. You're going to break a few eggs. I mean, I would have loved, if I can snap my fingers and go back and all that stretch didn't happen. And, everybody's happy to tune into MK, but that's not really how it works in the end. So you take the good, you take the bad, but tell me when there's been, presidents have come and thrown out the first pitch before at MLB games, but tell me when there's been this level of divisiveness where it's like, we just want our fights. I don't want to, like, I'm a Christian. I'd love to talk to any of you one-on-one about what Jesus can do to your life. And I mean that. I'm not going to track you down though. I'm not going to open this show with the type of stuff that you just might not want to hear, or it's not your thing or whatever. That's what has been going on in combat sports. Okay. It's not just, US with, whatever side you're on in US politics. And that one side is so aggressively coming through your TV screen like it was on the other side, right? With NBA and NFL putting political message like literally on the field and on the uniforms. I mean, I didn't love that either, but it's also like governments of other countries, radical governments that are being given huge platforms and spotlight. That's kind of hard to avoid. All right. From the Saudi Arabian, government coming into sports this aggressively to a lot, Kadyrov, to a lot of other things. So apologies for those who have said, I can't align with you anymore, but sometimes that is the result of free speech, having passion, and trying to deal with real life issues in real time that affect all of us. So it happens. There you go. There it is. All right. All right, what do you got, Lazy Bed? Don't bring this crap you say every week over here to the BCI. I don't think you're talking to me. Maybe you are, but I don't know. I don't really know. All right, thank you. All right. Matthew G, we love Luke. Luke, we love BC. Luke's got it. Chill. All right, I get it. You don't have to subscribe to Luke Thomas Gets Political, but I'm happy he's doing that. Certainly. And and I just want to reiterate to close the political concept or talk here. Just because you might be anti-Trump doesn't mean you're pro the other side. Okay, let me say that about myself. Good Lord, damn! I love when people are like, "You snowflake, BC. You far leftist." I'm like, maybe I just want to see people, treated correctly. I don't know. I can't run this world. All right, I'm barely trying to run this podcast. Let's get back to what's happening here. All right, let's do it. What do you got, Jay? How isn't Tank labeled a duck? He usually ducks real competition. For example, he decided to call out Loma once he knew Loma was going to retire. Well, I don't know if they knew, because at that point, Loma was on the verge. Top Rank wasn't sure if he was going to come back or not, and I think Top Rank thought they were going to get that Shakur versus Loma fight. In fact, I believe they offered that to Shakur as a point to stay. He chose to leave, and now with the business connections changing, it suddenly became viable for Tank to fight Loma, and Loma decided to retire. That's all on him. I don't say that to defend Tank. I understand that there's been a sort of long-standing run of critics saying he's fought a few tough matchups. You know what I mean? And we can't act like he hasn't. He certainly has. But has he consistently dared to be great and used his leverage as a star from a matchmaking standpoint to go after huge names? Not necessarily. The Ryan Garcia fight was great, and it was a huge opportunity. I didn't love the rehydration clause idea. It certainly happened before. It's A-side privilege. Ryan knew he had to do that in some ways to get that fight. He gambled and took that chance. It blew up in his face. But the recent run, the showing, kicking in his rematch clause against Roach and then not going through with it. I mean, I don't know the real financial realities behind there. I don't know if the Netflix Jake thing was a price he couldn't turn down. I mean, I don't know all of that. And they are prize fighters and their careers are short. So again, make that money, player. And if Tank's heart is out of it, then maybe he shouldn't be lining up against the biggest names. But to act like he has, to act like he hasn't failed to live up to the hype and the expectations. No, he has, right? He's hit some big marks. He's certainly built himself into a huge attraction. Credit to Al Heyman and PBC, Leonard Ellerby, and those who have had a key role in that. But you're right. I mean, for boxing purposes, he had a close fight that people didn't think he won. He should go back in there and prove us wrong. Floyd did that with Castillo. Floyd did that with Maidana. For all of the bad things we say through the years about the timing of Floyd's matchmaking, he still made sure all those names were on his resume, whether the timing was perfect for us or not. I don't really know where Tank's head is at or where his future's at. I really don't know. But yes, he is at a point where you've been a title holder or the biggest star in this one division for a long time, and he still hasn't looked like he's been going out of his way to fight Shakur or any of these big names. Is that just another side of the street thing? Or is that he doesn't want to challenge himself? I don't know, but it don't look good. It certainly doesn't. And as a fighter, I'm a huge Tank fan. I mean, I don't see how you couldn't be. You can definitely not be a fan of the person with the repeated missteps. It's a rough thing to try to come to terms with, for sure. It's a quandary in that regard, but him as a fighter is fantastic. Him as a pillar in the sport, as a star outside of those missteps, has been fantastic. I'm upset too. I'm disappointed too, but what does that mean? Zoe's here. Hold on. Let me get the door. Let me entertain you in the meantime with something that you don't see coming. Here we go. Let's hear from Rave.
A message to Brian Campbell. Do not ask me what is on the USB stick.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Rafe. Legendary rant from Rafe yesterday. Check it out on Inside the Box. Zoe the cat is here. This will get messy. She'll probably knock things over. She just wants a little rake action, but we will provide here. All right. What do you got here? The guy in the chair, Russell from Georgia, reporting tardy, but I don't feel tardy. Yes, I'm also hot for teacher. Russell knows where Big Chicken is at, and also Elvis married him. So shout out to that fine gentleman right there. All right. Let's hear from Coca Randallin. Now, when Luke goes on his rant, it drives us to morning combat. We're not over it. I mean, it also can do that too. You can hate watch MK. You can love it. If it's not your thing, if you don't like what you want, turn off your station. I mean, that I'm not driving away people, but that's also true. You don't like something, go. I mean, that's how it is, right? That's what it is. All right. Let's hear from J Ray B02, my man right there. Thank you for your support of this pod. You fixed your mailbox. Yes, but my wife will remind you, and so will my neighbors, that it took me a year and a half because I decided to do that dirtbag Band-Aid move of putting the broken mailbox in a massive pot bucket and filling it with sand. And then that sand grew weeds, which turned into flowers. And then suddenly for a day, I looked like a genius. J Ray says, I installed a new utility sink. All us small town dirtbags have to learn how to DIY projects eventually. You're right. We do. And there are some wins. There are some wins I've had in the 8 years that I've owned this house. A few of them. The problem is, anytime my dad will call and be like, oh, a toilet, you can put that in 90 minutes. And then like on day 2, I'm like, I think I've come to terms with, I don't have the brain for it. We have gifts. Doesn't mean we can't learn stuff, but I just don't have a mechanical brain that understands how things get put together or taken apart. I'm heavy handed. I break stuff. I got the creative brain. It happened. Can you teach a 47-year-old new tricks? To some degree. All right. But yes, the mailbox was a success. It happened. I'm sure my neighbors are ultimately relieved that it's less white trash looking outside my house. Thank you. Matthew G, still talking politics. It's not free content. Nothing is free. It costs you time and life. And Luke isn't worth giving that to when he acts like that. Then don't watch him. And if that means don't watch MK, don't watch MK. Hate to say it, but that's the truth. We're not state-run media completely yet. You can turn off your station if you want to. Thank you. All right. I mean, I don't always agree with Luke's takes too, but I respect his stance, and I respect that at the core. And this is what I've grown to really respect about Luke as a man. Like, is he gruff? Is he ridiculous? Is he an ex-Marine frat boy and all these things? Of course. But he's also a great person, dad, husband, and really cares about people. Not all people, you'll hear that come through on MK, but like ultimately, bottom line, has a strong moral compass. So I try to give him that benefit of the doubt. And I think I've learned a lot from knowing him and our friendship. And I think that's important. You know what I mean? For sure. All right. Yeah. Lazy Bed's telling him, don't watch it. Complain over here. Yeah. Don't watch. There we go. Let's move on from that. Zoe, how are you? Good. Zoe's the OG of this house. I think she's like moving on to 9 years old here. She's the only one that came from the other house. All right. You made it, Zoe. You're still here. Keep, get after it. There we go. All right. My boy Arturo from London. Sports washing is happening. It's hard not to talk about it. Indeed. All the way. All right. Let's get back into the Beatles with Marc Antoine Beausoleil here. Barrios. What a Barrio. Thank you, sir. If the Beatles had never revolved past their Help album, so Rubber Soul and On never existed, and they instead just kept refreshing album more or less like Help, what would their legacy be? Interesting question. And I welcome any and all Fab Four questions. And I've actually been on a heater of late of row 8 late night headphones on, really. I put on the White Album last night. I actually never do this. Listen to it back to back, because sometimes, you know what this is like. Sometimes you'll put on something that you've heard a million times, but haven't heard in a while, or haven't heard in this era of your palate and your ear of terms of being able to listen, and it just hits again. And the songs that were tired or overplayed or whatever, or I've lost the ability to find the true genius in this, suddenly get refreshed. Boy, did I have that feeling on Dare Prudence, on, of course, While My Guitar, but Happiness is a Warm Gun, even songs that I would claim outwardly to not like The Continuing Story of Bungalow Bill, where Yoko jumps in with that, no queer, he looks so mean, that line. Okay, there you go. But to answer your question, so if they had gone all the way through Help, which was album number 5, in terms of the UK release, which are the releases that matter, which I'm thankful that over, all these years later, people don't really talk about this divide anymore, because everyone now, past 1970 who has consumed the Beatles has probably consumed it under the original UK album order, and not the weird bootleg US distribution of where they combine songs from different albums and made albums that aren't real, like Beatles 6 or Beatles 65 or, that kind of BS, or Hey Jude even, which was a US release album, but not in the UK. They would have ultimately become part of the British invasion. Ultimately, if not still the centerpiece of the British invasion, because let's not forget the massive amount of singles that came out of those first 5 albums. I mean, almost genre changing singles, Please Please Me off the album of the first name, their debut album, just right there. Yes, it's sort of an homage to Roy Orbison's style of songwriting, but I think that song just holds up so well. And you go on through Can't Buy Me Love, 8 Days a Week, She's a Woman, Ticket to Ride. I mean, that's Help, that's Hard Day's Night. Those first 5 albums alone, of just taking the 2 to 3 singles per record there, legendary, ultimately legendary. So, they'd still be above the Dave Clark 5. They'd still be above, counterparts from the same era, the same genre, the same place. But would they be the innovative, not just genre changing, but in some ways genre establishing innovators that they are known for now? Absolutely not, because it took the 2 album transition of Rubber Soul and Revolver, which, really put together where rock and roll was changing during that period. Bob Dylan plugging in, the Byrds, who were seen as the American Beatles, were really coming out and changing the way, I think, and then of course the teasing of the psychedelic turn that was to come. Then you get full on psychedelia with Sgt. Pepper's Magical Mystery Tour. In between, you get the White Album, which, as we've talked about, just essentially is a giant bowl of soup of every genre, of them going back over the songbooks of their youth and sort of, rewriting, recreating songs of that ilk. And then, of course, the roots rock finished with Let It Be, and the absolute pillar classic of Abbey Road in between, which, if anything, teased the direction Paul was going to go solo and with Wings, where he was known for these elaborate songs like Band on the Run, which were essentially 3 mini suites, put together, 3 mini songs put together for an extended suite. So they still would have gone down and been relevant and been remembered, and probably would have pumped out a few more under this scenario, help-like albums with big singles. And it's crazy to even look back, because that's where popular music was in the mid 60s, where the single was still so, at that time, thought to be so much more of an effective selling tool than an actual album, that it does pain me to look back on even the fact that they are, in a 10-year span, 8-year span, whatever you want to say, like the most successful rock band of all time, most influential, most this, most that. Yet how much stronger would those albums be if so many of these huge songs that were only singles and were never put on albums, like She Loves You, like I Feel Fine, like so many of those, what if you add those? What if you take Revolver, and add in Paperback Writer, add in Lady Madonna, for example, right? Then you're just talking about elevating it even more. So without the change in the genre, they would have petered out eventually, especially as psychedelic rock came on and things really changed in the late 60s. But if they had died Kurt Cobain style, as dark it is to even say that out loud, right after Help, that 5-album stretch would have been it still would have been, then they would have been the extension of what they kind of already were, which is taking what Buddy Holly did and raise it to even the next level. They still would have gotten that respect, but interesting to think about. All right, there we go. All right, let me try to catch up here. I'm way behind. All right, way behind. I'm trying to get yeah, there we go. Zoe, you doing good here? You chilling? There we go. There it is. Yeah, holy early ramble, Stefan. That's what I'm talking about. Did we plan this? Not really, not well, but we're here. Okay, and that's all that matters. All right, a lot of talk about politics, but we're done. We're done talking about that. All right, what do you got over here? Intangible 79. Jank Tank exhibition is fine. Just hope the undercard is better than Canelo Crawford. Yeah, I mean, we did talk about this on Inside the Box yesterday. The Canelo Crawford undercard, prelims, and main card certainly have well-matched fights, certainly have some hardcore delight. I mean, I love Sergey Bohachuk, Brandon Adams, part 2, the rematch. I, of course, called that first fight in at Ring City, USA. The upset knockout from Brandon Adams when he was down on the cards late. I love the Callum Walsh fight. I love the Lester Martinez Mobility fight. But I really think you have to chalk it up to the combination of the purses of the main event likely being so ridiculously high, mixed with the idea that this is Zuffa Boxing's launch. This is. So they want to push fighters like Callum Walsh that are going to get big spotlight conceivably for them in the future. So yeah, it's a little underwhelming from the let me grab the crossover casual fan and just pump it. You would have wanted a Lateo Fimo, a Shakur, a Ryan Garcia, someone like that on the undercard. But this is also the first step of Zuffa and TKO into boxing. So there you go, Zoe. Thank you for knocking everything over. That, I got to give him a chance, and I got to see how it looks. And from a hardcore stance, it's good enough. It's good enough, but it's not going to grab you. The hope is that it grabs you when you're watching it. We'll see what happens right there. All right. All right. Great stuff. Let's go over to Telvin Kipapa, our guy from Hawaii. All right. Big fan of this guy. I mean, the guy's up at 3 a.m. Just got off the job right there in the factory, I'm sure. No, I don't know what he's doing. He could be saving he could be a nurse. It could be a doctor saving the world here. So with UFC with Paramount, will you be cage side for UFC events? You want to champion interviews, in locker room interviews with the strawweights? All right, button up there, Kipapa. Okay. This just got announced, obviously, last week, and it was a shocker. We had heard rumblings inside, as I said before, that Paramount could get a piece of this deal. Not the whole enchilada, right? So, there's going to be a lot of, and there already is a lot of meetings, think tanking going on of how, we at CBS Sports, by extension of being under the Paramount flag, are going to really push and carry this, not just from CBSSports.com, not just from CBS Sports HQ, our 24/7 free streaming service, and not just from what will inevitably be a spinoff of shoulder content. I'm sure there's going to be betting shows, podcasts, digital shows. There's going to be a lot coming to that. Don't know all those details yet. Assume and hope I'll be a big part of this, and certainly a major player in our coverage, as I have been for the last 8 years for sure. So My deal's up in March, so you know, this feels like a great turn for me job security wise after a couple difficult years in what happened with the death of Showtime Sports and how that affected our coverage at CBS, where when I started at this job, their aim was to launch HQ and really be combat was going to be a stronghold, and it became a major one. I mean, they picked up Morning Combat. They brought in Luke Thomas. I mean, they were, you know, we went all in on combat for a stretch there. But over the years, the budget shrunk a little bit, and then things changed in a big way when Showtime went away. And I haven't traveled for CBS to a fight in a long time. There was a stretch in 18, 19 where I was going, you know, 6 or 7 a year. So will I be cage side for UFC events? Yeah, I've already been prepared and told that it's that in a big way. You know, we're going to have coverage at every numbered event in North America. I'm not sure the extent of what that'll be, but I have to assume it's going to be big. I'm going to have to assume we're going to send writers. We're going to send, you know, camera crews. We're going to send some things. So I'm super, super excited. I'm super excited about going big at the big events and putting a CBS Sports HQ desk on the ground there. So I expect to be a big part of that. I expect us to really, in the next few months, put our heads together, probably add some names and really get after it. So this was a surprising turn for my career that I greatly welcome and bring on. And I'd like to see where it goes. You know, I'm excited to see too. There's rumors that Paramount could be in the discussions for Zufo Boxing as well. So let's see how that all plays out in what role, either, you know, directly or just as a, I guess, a partner in that, you can say. But yeah, I expect to be at events. I expect to be backstage interviewing, you know, the names, kind of getting that Bronstetter like access or what ESPN has had in recent years. And it's going to be fun. I mean, like I said, there was a time early in my CBS career where we did have a very, very, very good relationship with UFC, particularly PR, and we're able to get a lot of big time access. I'm excited to get back to that point, because it is hard when you're suddenly not going to events live. You sort of lose your spot in line, you know, but there was a run back in the day where CBS Sports HQ would be sending me to camps, you know, a month out of a big pay-per-view and doing sit-down interviews. I want to get back to that level of stuff without question. So thank you, Telvin, for your question. All right, there we go. Intangible says BC and Kate Scott / Abdo there would be fire. She's very good. She's very good. I had the chance to work with Kate on a couple Showtime boxing pay-per-view undercards, you know, the Tank versus Garcia one, a few others, and she's quick, she's professional, she's fantastic on camera. I've done a couple weigh-ins with her as well. So I don't know. I would assume, given her role at Paramount, that she potentially could have some bigger role in our future combat sports. If that happens, I would certainly welcome it. She's definitely a professional and fun to work with, no doubt. So shout out all the way there. Beerus says, you're the man, BC, and the lone reason I'm still an MK loyal watcher. Well, I appreciate that. And it's not lost on me from the beginning when you take this show, which has two very different personalities, one largely from the MMA world, one largely from the boxing world, jams them together, that you're going to have a lot of people that are, you know, just like Mike and the Mad Dog, you're going to have a lot of people that are fans of one, absolutely hate the other. And that might be the fuel through the whole watch of your experience, where you're like, man, you know, why does Luke have this dirtbag, bad dad joking, weird strawweight loving co-host? Or damn, I love BC, but why does this other man yelling into the screen and talking about bloody crap, right? I mean, like, you know, it's part of the equation there. But anybody that is, you know, BC specific, appreciate you just the same. Thank you. All right. Matthew G supporting the show. Appreciate that, brother. Thank you, man. No, you're the man as well. Okay. We talked politics. We got through it. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Great question, Mr. C, the informal spectator. Why do we have one weekend in July with Usyk, Pacquiao, and Jesse Bam Rodriguez all fighting on the same day, and then almost 2 months of no big fights? Dude, it's weird. It's this year in boxing has been like that. There have been stretches. Remember that stretch where Turkey had like a big damn event almost every weekend, or back-to-back nights? I mean, there have been stretches this year where it's been big, 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 and you're like, okay, boxing feeling good. We're going in the right direction. New stuff coming. And now nothing. Some of that is Top Rank losing its television deal and looking to sort of rebrand in the second half. PBC, who I love and love calling fights for, have been, look, let's be fair, have been inconsistent in the Amazon era, consistently getting prime cards. I don't love this. I don't love that there's suddenly these super Saturdays, which can be fun as a fan and journalist, by the way, when you're covering something in the afternoon and then there's a big heavyweight title fight around dinner and then you got the nightcap. I mean, that can be fun. It's like a college football Saturday or an NFL Sunday. But if it comes at the price of 2 months of nothing, yes, this sport could be. I mean, that's the thing. And I'm not saying I'm coming around on, Zuffa. I mean, I want Zuffa Boxing to have a shot to come in here and see what you can do. I'm not saying I'm coming around on the idea of the negative aspects of this Ali Act or what this could mean for monopolization, but I am thinking pretty clearly from the heart of the counter to all that negativity of what are we going back to in boxing with the forced sanctioning bodies and all the the bullshit that we do have. It would be nice to have some level of organization. It would be nice to not schedule all the fights on 4 weekends and then have nothing else going on. I mean, say what we will, and we have, about what has felt like a watered down matchmaking era for the UFC. The key is, though, they are on almost every Saturday, like 43 or 44 of the 52 weeks. So at least you're getting that consistency, which once you start injecting that, I mean, what I love, 2/3 of the UFC cards that we have now so they can be stronger. I would love that. But you also have to say, do you love that, from a betting or just fun viewing standpoint that it's there every weekend? It's also kind of fun too. I wish boxing this year had better organization, had better flow in that regard. I don't disagree on that. All right. All right. Casey Hodgin, Casey, big case at bat. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you for coming in here. Shouldn't be afraid to speak out against government becoming more authoritarian. Thank you very much. I agree with you. Adopting our sport as its own propaganda arm, also something that has been aggressively going on. Yes, keep up the integrity, BC. Well, look, I'm trying. I always try to tell as much truth as I can. I'm also not dumb. I also realize that, I've been through this at ESPN. I've been through this at Showtime. I've been through this. There's times that you have partnerships. It's just the reality of where fight sports is at, that there's going to be network partnering with promotions at times. And that to some degree, is going to mute how aggressively critical. But if you have a space where you can speak and something matters to you and pushes against you in the negative ways, I think you have to let your piece be heard. I tried a lot of years to be Switzerland and be neutral and be, employable. And I still try to do that. But I think, like we've been talking about, we've seen some things in recent years that are just unprecedented, that are just ridiculous, that even if you end up coming around or end up finding out that it was okay in the end, same thing with this Ali Act change. In real time, as it's coming to you, to not process it and be honest, and you gotta be in this day and age. But there are limits to that. Do I want to be, no disrespect to YouTube, where I'm on right now, where Morning Combat has lived, where a lot of people have made great runs as content creators. That's great. I enjoy this, but I don't want this to be my full-time lot. I've got bigger dreams and aspirations to be on big time fights and big time broadcasts. So, I also understand how the game's played. I also understand that it's not going to benefit you to be at war with everyone and just keep yourself out of the mix too. So it's a balance. Sometimes you're not going to like my truth, but if you don't like that, turn off your station. Thank you, Casey, for your fine message. All right, there it is. Bira saying, yeah, for real, BC, it's true on both sides. The second you raise any criticism of a party, they immediately assume you're just diehard supporting the other. I know, it's so maddening, especially for someone who's really evolved to be more in the middle, because I see the pluses and minuses of both sides. I'm a registered Republican. I've never voted for a Democrat president. It's not that I wouldn't, but I just haven't. And, but I am also, not trusting of government in general, of things that we see in the news. So to be all or nothing on one side in 2025, when 80% of this is designed propaganda to get you to believe that all the news coming from the other side is false and everything you are hearing is 100% real in this ridiculous AI fake news era. Is just maddening to me in this day and age, how you could be, my side is 100% right and the other side is 100% crazy. You're both crazy. You're both crazy. All right. Normally, I'm able to unplug from this so that I can have peace and harmony in my life, because most of these things, fortunately, in this country aren't affecting me on a day-to-day basis. But that does seem to be changing. That really does. You know, it's they're coming for you. And I don't mean, the right side's coming for you, the left side. I just mean all this shit is coming for you now that, I'm trying to stay closer to it and more educated than ever before. But yeesh. The divide is real, and it seems to be purposeful and planned by others who have directions for this world. And I'm not getting crazy deep state conspiratorial with you, or maybe I am. All right. More news at 11. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm just one man trying to navigate a world with a few cats. All right. Zoe's the OG. All right. We love Zoe. Thank you, Zoe, for knocking over the Kovalev nesting doll. Appreciate that. Thank you. Zoe's tail is just, I think she's like a Himalayan cat or something. So this tail is wild. She can whack you in the face with it. It's crazy. There you go, Zoe. Big fan. Okay. Zen Zoe in the house. We appreciate that. All right. All right. There it is. Yep. Zoe is a day one-ish type of cat. Okay. Oh, Luke Nocita in the house too. This guy just woke up, poured a cup of coffee. By the way, Luke Nocita, shout out to our boys over there at Espresso Cannabis for sending that care package that you intercepted. Good Lord. All right. All right. Love you folks out there. That's great stuff. There it is. Yeah. A lot of politics is gay comments coming out of here. Okay, there we are. That's where we're at here. Are we done with politics today? I hope so. I hope so. What else you got, Chin? That's what I want to know. You got remix hair dye or what? What else you got? I mean, I could probably do a better job on the sides. Maybe I can get shot. Maybe I can, man, maybe imagine if the two spokesmen for this hair dye company were Big Brown and Big Beige together, arms around each other on the front of that box. Imagine that. Imagine the Reddits after that. Good Lord. All right. All right. Yeah. Okay. Let's go over to some more super chats and appreciate all these great people. All right. What do you got, Matt? Matthew Garrett, back at it. Thank you, sir. What's with Francis? Doesn't seem like a PFL return. I know. I mean, he did say in that Ariel interview, which I saw snippets from, because Ariel even asked him, like, what are your thoughts on a UFC return? And I do like that Francis's answer was like, what do you mean? I'm under contract for PFL. I'm trying to, get a fight with PFL. I'm not, look, we're at a point now where I think it's starting to get fair to sort of criticize some of Francis's decisions. And has this been a good deal for PFL? It's hard to say it is a good deal when they bring him in for so much money, throw so much, responsibility on him, opportunities that fighters have never seen that he fought for. And I'm happy. But then he doesn't fight for them for a year and takes big boxing matches and ultimately gets KO'd. And I know that's the freedom he fought for, but at the same time, I don't know what's up with him. It seemed in that interview like he does want to fight. It also seemed when he was presented by Ariel with questions about Don Davis's comments that he basically said, like, I didn't show up at PFL Africa because this isn't necessarily what I signed up for and how PFL is presenting it. So I don't really know what's really going on, but even though PFL seems to be making a positive turn of late in some very key things, their in-cage product has been pretty damn good. They're internationally selling out a lot of arenas. They're getting their shit together to some degree and starting to feature the people that need to be featured. And now they're putting belts on the line, although you can get a belt there for seemingly doing anything. And this August 3rd card is badass with Paul Hughes, Usman Nurmagomedov Part 2. I'll be talking to Paul Hughes in about 90 minutes. So I'm excited about that. But I don't actually know, it seems like there are a lot of unhappy people on the inside, from fighters that have spoken out to maybe people on the inside not always being exactly with the direction that Don and Peter Murray were taking it. But now it seems they're bringing in new executives, elevating people like Jonathan Coachman to a higher level and speaking role there. So I don't really know with Francis. I hope for PFL and his sake that They can find him a suitable opponent that would be sort of a super fight for him, or just throw him in a tournament. I don't know. I mean, it seems like Francis still has unfinished business and checks to cash in boxing. He talked openly about a Deontay Wilder fight that I think is actually perfect, and few of us would, would be upset with that. I still think Jake Paul should man up and fight in boxing Ngannou. Isn't that a fight that like people would freaking tune into and would be a challenge of Jake's skills and all that? But what do I know? But look, I don't think Francis is above criticism for how this has gone and whether this has been the value that PFL paid for, because it doesn't feel like it. And maybe some of that's their fault too, but it also feels like some of it could be easily be Francis's as well. All right. Good stuff from the people, okay? Paul Hughes calling Ali a dolphin was hilarious. I did not see that, but I need to look into that. That is funny. That is funny right there. All right. There you go. Good Lord, Brody Moret from Canada. Let's get off of that topic. Wow. Okay. All right. Good question from Old Man Sandine. Big fan of this guy from JBR, the Just Bleed Radio fellas. I thought Jake Paul had a PFL MMA contract. So did I, folks. I just wanted to see him MMA fight. Look, that would have been another interesting idea. And I do know that there was at times they at least reached out on the idea of like Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz in a PFL fight. I'm sure. I mean, at one time I heard there was even a potential Jake Paul versus Deontay Wilder MMA fight at the table. Or was it Nate Diaz versus Deontay Wilder? Either way, it seems to be that there could have been creative ways to use Jake Paul. I just feel like Jake Paul, with the success of his boxing promotion in the recent years, with his own trying to line up for super big defining fights like Mike Tyson, defining in the sense of the fame and money that came from it, that maybe, I mean, they also signed Amanda Serrano. We haven't, even though she has MMA fights, 3 of them in her history, or maybe 2 of them. She also didn't fight. Clarissa Shields did a couple and was like, yeah, I'm kind of done with that. I don't know. They do use Jake for, commercial type things, for like little video lead-ins, but for all the talk of all of that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on with Jake Paul in that regard. All right. Sorry, I got an itchy nose here. It happens. Let's go back. Let's go back to the people. Let's keep this show going. What else you got, BC? Let's see here. Matthew G, appreciate you once more, friend. Francis Fumble, I know it's hard to say with boxing matches and money he's made, but it feels a lot left on the table, and he's getting up there in age. I agree. I mean, damn. I think it would have been, I really wish PFL, if they had to stick to that tournament format, like I talked about, would have relaunched the tournament this year, certainly with the single elimination style that they're doing now, which is better. And I really wish they would have put their championships on the line and just said, look, we're going to reset. No more of this Champions League where all of our sub JV leagues are going to come together at the end for this big thing that nobody really cares about. What if they rolled out these tournaments this year in every division? They put a title, the official inaugural PFL championship, not the tournament championship. The actual championship is at stake in the tournaments. And then they plugged in Usman, Hughes, Dakota, Aaron Pico, and Francis into these tournaments. They would have gotten more mileage out of it. They would have probably gotten more attention out of it. But all in all, yes, to have Francis fight just once when he's really been under contract for like 2 years or more than that, it's tough. It's not like they've got a ton of heavyweight options they could put him in there against, but maybe they should have let off with him against Ryan Bader. Maybe they should have already done him against Vadim Nemkov. Maybe you take, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I don't know. Francis fought for the freedom that he got. Then he exercised that freedom, and it ultimately cost them. All right, Zoe has to leave. Let's hit you with a little bit of this.
He was the best guy around.
What about the people he murdered?
What murder?
Go ahead, Zoe. Go ahead. All right. What murder? Thank you. All right. Casey Hodgkin. Casey, big Casey. Thank you, sir. Odds of a future MMA fighting Morning Combat merge. Wow, I've never even thought of that. Probably not high. I don't believe that MMA fighting has that money to bring us in, and we seem to be doing pretty good right now under the All the Smoke Fight banner and under the DraftKings network. Although, do I love them guys? Mike Heck, AK Lee, Jed Meshew, Jose Youngs. Yes. You know, Casey Leiden. Itchy nose that makes it look like I'm either picking or on the cocaine. Neither. All right. Those are great folks. I love doing it. I love doing, you know, crossover stuff, whether that I'm on Below the Lines or, you know, Jed comes on pregame preview or Mike Heck on MK, however we've done it. But at this point, no. Also, my job is going to, you know, aggressively change. And I have to believe that's going to keep me really within the CBS Paramount window here. So we'll see how it all goes. We'll see how it all goes down. All right. Mr. C, Brian Norman Jr. staying a top look at Top Rank. Big signing for Top Rank at a tough time. I know that they seem close to announcing a monthly series on a cable network. I'm not exactly sure because I keep hearing counter and you know, there hasn't been an official announcement. This seems big for Top Rank to show you that they're still fighting, they're still in this, and they still want to secure the cornerstones of what their future is. And that's certainly Brian Norman Jr., Keyshawn Davis, Adola Mason, et cetera, Shushu Carrington. So happy for Top Rank, but yeah, I want to see where Top Rank, PBC, where a lot of these people are going to be at in 26 when things change, when Zuffa Boxing launches. Will Turkey align only with Zuffa Boxing, or will Turkey start his own UBOs here, you know, and involve more promoters? I don't know. I don't know where it's going. It's getting aggressive. It's getting wild. It's going to be, I guess, fun to see. We're going to see how it all, you know, where does BC fit into all, where's Kevin Lee fit into all this? I don't know. Great question from Canada's Brody Moret. BC, can you explain the still boring joke on the Keith Thurman video? So, yes. So back when Rafe and I, in the most recent iteration of our podcast at CBS Sports, when we were called In This Corner and then had to change it to State of Combat, we had this iPad that has this soundboard on it where I had like, you know, 20 pages of sound drops with 20, you know, something like 30 drops a piece per page. And in the weirdness of my brain, I always knew where every sound drop was. So if Rafe said a joke that reminded me of this, you know, I could easily call that up and play it. Unfortunately, as we've talked about, the technology didn't carry over. And then when I tried to update the iPad, it block the ability for that old app to work anymore. But one of the big sound drops on there, we had a whole page of Keith Thurman drops, was when I forgot what fight he was talking about. Maybe it was Jeff Horn against Terrence Crawford, where he's like, because, you know, Keith had that rant in that same interview where he was like, Jeff Horn was a man. Jeff Horn was a real man. But I think he said something like, heard Jeff Horn was fighting, sounded boring, watched Jeff Horn fight, still sounded boring. And after that drop became a regular drop on our podcast that was regularly referenced, I was hosting PBC's Face to Face in 2019 in LA, the interview show ahead of fights. And I had Keith Thurman on for the Pacquiao episode. And after we were done shooting the in-car portion, how that would work was, each fighter would arrive for the day at staggered times. Each fighter would get into this SUV with a camera crew. We'd have two cameras in there from all, you know, two different angles. I would be sitting with the person. Normally we'd have to turn off the AC because it was too loud. So we'd be dripping sweat in this van, in this SUV, driving around the streets of LA, Beverly Hills, while I did sort of like a half-hour interview. And those answers were presented in the show to make it look like the fighters were getting a ride to the studio and they're sort of talking about what they expect. But I also would use that as sort of a pre-interview where I'd touch on certain touchy topics to get a little feel of how they might react for the studio segment coming up. Then after we did, so this was Keith and I, when we got out of the car, when we were about to transition to the studio, everybody was going to get dressed up nice and we were going to do the actual face-to-face thing. And I brought up that joke. Heard Keith Thurman was going to be here, sounded boring, found the man, still sounded boring. And Keith probably had no idea what I was talking about or referencing, even though it was his own interview, but he played ball just the same. So there you go, Brody. You got the long, ridiculous inside story that wasn't that good to begin with. Brody also adding, Keith Thurman is great on the mic. I love that guy. I hope he beats Fundora. I'm like I said, I'm interested in that fight. I want to see what happens. I mean, if I had to guess, would I believe that Keith gets stopped by this hungry, dangerous version of Fundora? Yes, but I don't think Keith is as long gone as people think. I think that he's going to have to dig deep here and really rely on those wheels, and try to expose parts of Fundora. We're going to find out there October 25th. Your boy BC hopefully on that call. All right, there we go. Lazy Bed, Thurman Thomas or Keith Thurman? Great question. I was a huge, I started fantasy football. We had a family league, the Campbell Family Fantasy Football League. Shout out to Uncle Tony for starting that in the 1990 season when I was still in 6th grade, starting 7th grade. And I had Thurman Thomas, not Keith Thurman, in year 2 in 1991 when I won my first fantasy football Super Bowl. So you never forget those people that got you there. Okay. All right. That big $250 cash prize, which I instantly, by the way, went to the starter outlet store in a bad section of New Haven with my dad. And with that money, purchased a starter jacket of the Atlanta Falcons because I became a huge fan of them when they got Jerry Glanville, had Deion Sanders, would have, Evander Holyfield on the sidelines, MC Hammer. I mean, this is 7th grade BC in full effect, but it was the old style. Because remember when Jerry Glanville came in, remember he'd buy a ticket for Elvis every game, even though Elvis wasn't coming through that door. He changed the color scheme to black, but this was like an old school of the red color scheme. So there you go. Long story that makes no sense. Thank you very much. All right. Andre Rison, loved him. I mean, that mansion took a hard fall from left eye there, but loved it. All right. I used to love Van Morrison in the 90s, old man Dave. I loved Van in the 70s as well, in the late 60s. Van Morrison's great because I've bought a lot of Van Morrison records. I've even been going up into his late 70s, early 80s run there. And like, you can't find a bad one. You really can't. Even the ones that aren't, critically highly rated. And I've got into some of his crooner stuff in the 90s and 2000s. And I mean, just a fantastic performer and artist. This was a chinchilla question that started this. BC, have you listened to Van Morrison's new album? It's called Remembering Now. Really good. I have not, but every once in a while, these, super old guys will put out. I mean, not everybody can do Bob Dylan's 1997 Time Out of Mind and just resurrect his career, win a Grammy for best album. But I do love when a, well past their prime person is still doing it just for the art. Like if you look at Paul Simon's run of the last couple of decades, where every couple of years, he's put, or even David Crosby had a few interesting albums before his death where you're like, okay, this is where this artist is at right now. And sometimes it's super endearing. I love that double record I have of Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead that he did a few years ago, where it was just like old Americana type songs that he was singing. It was like mature and that gravelly voice, but it's just brilliant stuff. I will, Chinchilla, give that a listen. I do my key listenings on my Tidal app that Bronstetter got me hooked on. And usually on MK Day, on the train there and back, I really put in my strong listenings right there. Great stuff, dude. Seriously, Lazy Bed, Tupelo Honey is becoming my favorite Van Morrison album. It really is. It was of his prime run. It was the one I had accessed the most recently, finally buying a vinyl copy and listening to it for the first time and just being like, this is like singer-songwriter Van living in England with his wife at the time and young child, like happy. This is happy adult Van. And that album is fantastic. Now, is it better? Is it better than Astral Weeks? Will any Van Morrison album ever be better than Astral Weeks? Probably not. And I know it's easy to overblow Astral Weeks because it's so lauded in his canon, but it's so lauded for a reason. I mean, that's one of my favorite records to go back and really read how it came together and how Van was so shy and he ordered up all these jazz musicians, but yet didn't communicate with them, didn't give them any instruction. He recorded everything live, but he recorded his behind, in its own little glass room with the lights off and just enough light where you can see his face. And he told he told somebody to tell all of those, different reed players and different, all different instruments that they brought in, flute and all that stuff, saxophone, and just was like, play whatever the hell you want. I got some basic chord structures here, play whatever you want. And, it's definitely an album that takes a little time to understand, but then when you do, the spontaneity, the originality of it, damn the man. I love that one. That was always in the early 2000s when I had my 100 disc CD changer and my CD third floor first apartment. You come home from the bar, you know, you grab the Orange Julius gimmick, you know what I mean? And you put on Astro Weeks and you turn off the lights, you light a candle and just, you know, like the English channel. That's what we're talking about right there. Okay. Great stuff. All right. Yeah, that's a hell of a story. All right. Thank you, Lazy Bed. That's great. Chinchilla, Body Snatchers is Radiohead's best song, in your humble opinion. That's interesting. Let me see. I'm feeling like I don't, what album is that on? Oh, that's on In Rainbows. Okay. Yeah. So even though In Rainbows is my favorite, is definitely my favorite Radiohead album. I've, that period where you haven't fully assigned the names of the songs to the songs yet, when you're still in that romantic honeymoon period of, oh my God, this album's unbelievable. That's where I'm at, dude. That whole album is great, but yes, I know where that song is on there. I'm still going to tell you that my favorite Radiohead song, and it hasn't changed since I heard it for the first time, is National Anthem off of Kid A. It is like abrasively jazzy and aggressive, and yeah, man. Okay. Yeah, man. All right. Also, Brody, you're not wrong. Climbing Up the Walls off OK Computer is 10 out of 10. I mean, so is Paranoid Android and that incredible Johnny Greenwood solo. There's just like, oh yeah. I mean, there's so many, Brody. Okay. All right. There we go. Also from Rally Sport 92. BC, have you listened or watched Stevie Richards podcast? It's very insightful into the business of wrestling. No, I haven't. I know that he's doing his own thing. I know that he's sort of taking some chances in there too and telling the truth, kind of like what Maven Huffman is doing, and credit to Maven. I haven't listened to Richards yet. I've seen a couple things online. I've taken a pretty large break away from wrestling podcasting because it can get overwhelming. Although my favorite wrestling podcast, The Lapsed Fan, just launched their deep Hulk Hogan, post-death deep dive that I'm going to tackle bit by bit. But I appreciate the pump here for Stevie Richards. Always loved his work there. Saw him originally in ECW when I'm in that ECW show I went to in 1998 off TV at the Sting in New Britain, this seedy little club, where the ring was so close to the ceiling that when they came off the top rope, people would hit their head on the ceiling. Like, I saw the most classic lineup of everyone before they were poached and left ECW, from Raven to the Dudleys to Sandman to FBI, the full-blooded Italians. I mean, to everyone. And that is one of the most coveted experiences. They threw beer at us, Big Bubba, verbally assaulted everybody in the crowd to the point where they were trying to jump the barricade to defend their fat female girlfriend. I mean, it was just a wild, memorable time. All right, let's hear from Justin right here. All right, let's hear from him. BC, that's me. Do you think boxing will keep the different belts, all of the different belts, or will it ever simplify to a one belt per division? Obviously, the one belt per division thing would be the ideal goal. It seemed to be some movement when Turkey resurrected the ring belt and was trying to push that, and is still trying to push that front and center as the belt. I thought, okay, is there a new world of where we tried to do about 15 years ago, where the Ring Magazine champion is the true champion of the division, but then the other four, things are more of like number one contender JV belts. I don't think that's going to happen now because of what TKO is trying to do, right? Change the Ali Act, create this UBO system, and put out their own belts. And, ultimately, I understand the problem with that. It gives the promoter a high level of control and negotiation. A promoter doesn't like a current champion, can just strip him of the belt and kick him to the curb. Like, it's not great. But again, the four sanctioning bodies era sucks, and it sucks in every possible way. So I would rather have a reality. Now, does it need TKO with Zuffa Boxing, with Turkey's money, to succeed and push everybody out to get there? It might. I think the near future will probably be, Zuffa Box kicking off with their own belts, the four belt sanctioning bodies trying hard to stay relevant. But what's confusing is, why is Turkey carrying on with this WBC prospect tournament thing they've been doing? Why are we carrying on with that when Turkey's already told the world that him and Dana are going to crush everyone? I still don't understand how we get to that point or what happens. But if the choice is the 4-belt system now, which is extra bastardized by the WBA's constant, launching of fake titles, and then the WBC doing the super champion bullshit, do I want that, or would I rather have one champion per division? Yes, but I don't know if we get to that dream. Would I rather have then a UBO thing where super promoters create their own leagues? It aids, unfortunately, in the further segregation. But what if it's like peak MMA when UFC was on top, but Strikeforce was very viable, and Bellator launches soon after, where you're like, okay, each league has their own titles and there's a hierarchy in the league, but maybe guys can graduate from those other leagues and go. I mean, if that becomes the reality, even that's better than what we actually do have. So I don't know yet. Can we just have one per division? We would love that, but it's probably going to take a strong arm takeover to get there, because as much as I want to protect the sport and speak up for it, the disorganization, the purposeful disorganization, the constant bickering, I mean, it's tiresome. It drives fans away. It's rough. It's rough. All right. That's all I got to say on that. All right. What do you got over here? Neil Steele. Jake takes this one. Size beats skill. I love Tank. He's like pound for pound, one of the hardest hitters ever. But I've seen enough Jake Paul fights to know he's defensively tight. Plus he's got like 60. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what, I mean, we talked ourselves into Floyd versus Logan. As weird it was going to be, at least they were going to maybe Logan tries to use that size and goes for broke. And then we see Floyd, popping him and dropping him. And then what did we get? A weird exhibition, where Floyd, I mean, what's weird about that is Floyd, those comments Floyd made afterwards, where he said like, man, that guy hit hard with those jabs. I don't think I want to do this anymore. That was weird, only to see him continually do exhibitions after that. That fight was a monster disappointment. It didn't actually turn into a fight. It was sort of a weird sparring match. Tyson Paul was a weird sparring match. Could this one become more competitive? I guess it could, but do we expect Tank to go for broke in a situation and maybe get caught with something big from a heavyweight? Or is Tank going to be able to see and avoid everything? And maybe he's going to, I mean, maybe there is an entertaining reality if he's dodging punches and it looks like Pacquiao against De La Hoya and he's backing up and hurting Jake, and you're like, oh my God, is he going to stop Jake? Are they going to go 100%? It's an exhibition. I don't know. I'm not trying to get sued by anybody. I'm just saying, like, I don't love this. I don't expect it to be great. We've been down this road before. Is this a better version than Jake versus Tyson? I would guess, yeah, in some ways it's an active live fighter, but I don't know what it's going to become. And when you're not making it a real fight, not that I really think this should be, who the hell is going to sanction this? Again, at the end of the day, why are we doing this? All right. Why are we doing this? To make money and attention. They both have a lot of money and attention. I hate it. Brody, thank you. The national anthem sung by Radiohead off of Kid A sounds like the end of the world. Yes, it's the end of the world as we know it, but listening to it, I feel fine. I feel very fine. Well done. All right. 10 o'clock TV's on. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. BC, I think you're reading the TKO Turkey thing wrong here. Yeah, please talk to me about it. I'm open to suggestions. It's more complicated. I don't think they are working together as closely as people think. The unanswered question, Brody, to me, is Zuffa Boxing and TKO's only involvement going to be the 2 to 3 super fights per year on Netflix, paid by Turkey, and this idea of this monthly prospect show, wherever they land, could be Paramount, where they start to crown their own TKO champions, and I would assume try to pick up free agents or younger fighters and create their own league here. And if that's just that and nothing more from their crossover, then maybe you're right. Maybe it continues on as is elsewhere. Maybe Turkey's Ring Magazine series, maybe Turkey's Riyadh season cards continue outside of the Netflix ones to be Turkey on DAZN, working with Eddie Hearn, working with Frank Warren, working with Oscar De La Hoya, and then I guess Top Rank and PBC have to figure it out for themselves. Maybe that is the reality. But I think it's fair to say TKO Zuffa Boxing isn't taking over the sport unless somehow those two things are merged, unless somehow Turkey buys a promotion or Turkey signs, you know, Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren to also fuel fighters to this UBO of TKO. If they're going to keep it secret, then you're right. Maybe it isn't as closely as we think. And then we have to really, I guess, in some ways, put the brakes on how far this Zuffa boxing thing can go in the short term. Because yes, if it's only a long-term thing, it's going to take a while to slowly rebuild the sport under a new setting there. But I don't know. There's still some very unanswered questions. On March 5th, when they announced it, it seemed like they were teaming up to crush everyone else. And now, yeah, there we go. All right. Losing my voice already today. All right. Losing my mind. Yeah. Sydney Frankenstein. Thank you, friend. All right. We don't need to always agree MK all day. You're right. At the end of the day, we don't. And I think we waste too much energy in this life, whether it's politics, religion, policy, sports, music, whatever we're arguing, under this idea that the argument must end with a winner. The argument must end with one person convincing the other that they were right and that we must crush the competition. No, the argument ultimately is, you know, and is if both people can get their points across and be heard. And then, you know, maybe down the road that plants a seed. Maybe that changes the way people think, if done correctly. But yeah, the propaganda war of Republican versus Democrat in 2025 is like, you know, Yankees, Red Sox, Duke, North Carolina on steroids, you know, Celtics, Lakers. It's like, you know, we're cheering for one side against the other. Both sides are criminal and are suspect and are probably, you know, run by bankers in other countries. If you really want to get into it with me. All right. Enough of that shit. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Luke Backman, young boxing prodigy, rising on the podcast scene and the news breaking scene. Shout out to Luke Backman. Morning, BC. I'm late, so you might have answered, but do you have any faith in Tank fighting legit competition after Jake Paul? I have a feeling it might be the last time we see. Yeah, that's my fear. The feeling that you have, Luke, is that this could be the last time we see Tank in the ring. Either ever, probably not ever, but for a while. You know, Tank might need time off. I mean, he did, you know, if you go back to certain interviews, what Tanks talks about is he got into boxing to get out of a life that he knew had a dead end on it, you know, in West Baltimore. And I'm not absolving him of domestic violence along the way or anything like that. But I'm saying, you know, it happens to a lot of fighters where you get famous, you make a ton of money, you're sitting around and you're like, why am I doing this charade anymore? I won, I beat the game. Sometimes if that's the case, you need a year or two off to spend some of that money to, you know, have good family time. And, you know, I respect the one part Tank said that when he talked about retirement earlier this year, he just wanted to get out of the fighting mindset and actually have peace and be a family man. I mean, some of his actions seem to counter that, of course, but yeah, I got those fears that he's taking this fight because he would prefer to just cash this, you know, circus thing and then walk away. And if that's the case, I'd rather obviously for his own physical and mental health, have him out than in. You don't want people in high spots, you know, and when their heart isn't in it, you're going to get hurt ultimately. But that's my fear as well. That is my fear. You know, can I tell you right now, I'm confident that whatever happens with Jake, then he comes back in February and rematches Roach. I'm not that confident. Okay. We should have already seen him against Shakur. We should have. And I'm not, you know, and it doesn't have to be Turkey funded, in my opinion. Well, it probably does now because Shakur seems to be signed with Turkey, but I think there were windows there that fight could have happened and should have happened. All right. What do you got, Danger Mouse from the UK, my friend? We're friends now, Danger Mouse and I. BCX is 1 year and 10 days younger than JBR. All right. All right. There we go. 1 year and 10 days. Love that. Have I been doing this for that long? I don't think I've been doing it for a year yet. Have I? I don't know. Oh, maybe I'm wrong. LazyBed says August 12th was the BCX's first birthday. Was it really? I'm 9 days past the birthday, the 1 year. Well, thank you guys. Okay. Let's talk about that for a second. Thank you for, if that's true. Time just, you know, time lately, really since the fall of Showtime, and I've been trying to put my career back together. Time is just this long period of waiting. Is the BCX where I want it to be 1 year in? No. But have I built something? Have we built something here that is, you know, small, intimate, important, informative, entertaining? Some of those things, I'm sure, for sure. Yeah. So I'm happy. I am happy. I'm happy to have this platform with you guys. I'm happy to reunite with Rafe. I'm happy to have a spot for my legit fight interviews. I'm happy to have my friends on in the game. I don't care ultimately, you know, they don't do traffic, whatever. I can get some of my friends on and talk shop and have fun. Yeah, it's been a good run. All right. So there we go. There it is. All right, what do you got here? Run dem cheeks. Yeah, Joe's in the house. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. BC, didn't have time to think of a proper question, but what would you say is your number one favorite thing about the Beatles? Have a great day. Great question. Really great question. You know, I could just as well say, the harmonies. I could just as well say the pioneering genre changing that they went through, that they led. I mean, they led the charge in psychedelia in the mainstream. There's no question. They weren't the first, but they led that overall charge. They led the charge in the British invasion. But I think ultimately, because I had to take, when I say I was obsessed with the Beatles from the age of 16 when I started my junior year in high school, and you always have to respect the people that were your gateway drug to get into something. I have got to respect a guy I went to high school with who I haven't talked to probably since then, named Dave Milton, who I came over his house to hang out. We watched The Clockwork Orange, which you'll do at that age, you know what I mean? And he's like, yo, I burned you a copy of Revolver from the Beatles. That should be your entry into this. And then he even gave me an Abbey Road t-shirt that he had extra and was like, yo, you're gonna take this, and I grew up with the Beatles. I grew up with the White Album. I grew up with my dad playing the hits, right? But when I heard Revolver, I was like, oh, they do this type of stuff too, and that opened the door in so many ways that I had an addiction level to this band from age 16 to 22. That was just disgusting. That really like it was the only thing that mattered in my life. You really have to go years of not consuming something like that on a high level to reset your palate, your ear, to re-engage, and luckily my music, enjoyment and education has evolved and grown and especially now with vinyl and great headphones and great turntables, I mean, the quality of the CD players and car stereos we were listening to in the 90s and early 2000s was just crap compared to today. I mean, my wife's Subaru Ascent, the sound system in there would blow away anything I've ever owned in my entire life. So the thing I appreciate or love about, or my favorite thing about them the most now, when I go back and rediscover albums and songs by them that I had previously heard 3 million times and thought there was a limit to understanding the brilliance of, what I realize now was that instrumentally, the four of them were so insanely talented, but so insanely different, yet made it weave together and created not only a chemistry within them, and a big part of that goes to George Martin's producing, his understanding of orchestration and all of that and arrangements for sure. And he educated them and taught them, and then slowly you watch them evolve into being who they are. But it's not just the Lennon-McCartney songwriting duo of filling in each other's sentences, and how they did that a lot of times in the songwriting process. It's really when you go back and listen to pop hits from them that you think in theory are basic, but you listen under it with a fresh ear, you put on the headphones, and you really realize, and this really came out in that great documentary from a few years ago where Rick Rubin and Paul McCartney, that black and white documentary where they went into the studio and just played Beatles songs and isolated Paul's bass. And for example, you can now, when you put on a great pair of headphones and listen to really any era, and I was doing that, like I said, last night with the White Album, you just hear, parts of the way that McCartney plays bass. He was originally a guitarist and a pianist and came to the bass because somebody needed to play it. And the genius that he taught himself to be, to sort of kind of like REM's, Mike Mills there, how he's always sort of playing this bass pattern that is so contrast to the guitar, yet it just complements so well, rather than playing a bass that's sort of following the guitar around, you become to really appreciate the little tiny nuances that they threw into these songs, little transitions in the middle eight and what have you in the songwriting process, that if they didn't have those little sprinkles on top, that song wouldn't be as dynamic as it actually is. They were absolute geniuses at pooling the talents of the four of them and turning it into this machine that could not stop creating not just hit after hit, but evolving the genre of where rock and roll was at that time. No, they're not hard rockers. You know, it's largely sunny love songs for the most part, although don't discount John's, sort of open walking out of his own mental health in his own songwriting. It can be pretty downtrodden, and it was the perfect contrast to Paul in so many ways. But really, it's the cohesiveness of that band and the ability to even they were innovators. Even if you look at like the Let It Be album, those throwaway loose lines that they kept in before and after the songs were, of the recording process, where they're playing Two of Us for the 57th time, and John says something funny, or I'd like to say thank you on behalf of the group and myself, and I hope we pass the audition. Those throwaway lines that they made part of the songs, that kind of stuff. They changed everything, and maybe they died out at the perfect time when they needed to, because they needed to all spread their wings, solo wise and go. Would they have persevered in the 70s and still put out 5-star albums after another? I don't know. But good Lord, what did they produce in 8 years? They were the most influential and successful band of all time. End of story. End of story. And it's that cohesiveness, that creativity within them. Because individually, you see with their careers, they're very good individual careers, but not AA plus. John probably had the best totality of quality albums in terms of highest quality. George certainly had the best single album in All Things Must Pass. Paul was pretty consistent, but you can hear the limitations of Paul, just like MK fans that love Luke. If you listen to me solo, it might not do it for you. You can hear the limitations of what you're not getting from me, from what you get from Luke. You can hear those limitations in their solo careers. It really was just the perfect band coming together with the perfect everything at the right time. There you go. Thank you. Great question. Good shit. All right. Let's get into, I got to get set up for this Paul Hughes interview. So we're going to take this home. Let's go here. At Bat. Thank you, sir, for that Canadian loony there. Thank you. What is your process to listening music while driving? Bluetooth playlist from your phone or radio quiet time? So definitely haven't listened to, regular radio in like 15 years. I used to, I was always the CD guy with the giant book, or the multiple books or the multiple spindles, in the back seat. We're like, hold on, while I'm driving, I can pull out. Oh, that's my jam band spindle. Oh, I think it's under here. Let me put it in. I mean, the amount of distracted driving we did, back in the day is ridiculous. Nowadays, Sirius XM is look, it gets played out. You can save 18 stations, and sometimes, the final 3 or 4. They're always fluid. I'll drop one to add one. Sometimes I'm in the mood. I got the Grateful Dead station on there. Sometimes I got different things. Most of the time I love, the core ones, the classic vinyl station, the bridge, when you're feeling a little mellow. I got Yacht Rock saved on there. I got Classic Rewind. I've got Lithium, the alternative one. But that can get stale. So running the Tidal app through my phone, through my car stereo is ultimately the preferred method, right? You got an album in mind as you go to sit down, you cue it up, and then there you go. But I offset that and alternate with going around the horn on Sirius XM when I'm more in a let me just run into a song type of mood. But even those playlists get played out, and then you're like, wait, I just heard the same song on 4 different stations in a 5-minute span. What the hell is going on here? That happens. It does happen. But, I tried to teach my kids, when you're in the car and it's a nice day out, the windows go down, the sunroof goes open, and we must rock. All right. Often with Zeppelin or Pearl Jam. That's what it is. Okay. We must rock. We must. All right. That's the way I was taught. My dad used to sit me down and let's see, when did Appetite for Destruction from GNR come out? In 87. So I'm 3rd grade in 87. In 4th and 5th grade, almost every day after school, if my dad was home, he'd yell from upstairs to come down to the basement. He'd go, hey, sit on the couch. I'd be like, no, Dad, not the Daily Dose again. He'd be like, it's time for your Daily Dose. And he had these speakers that were like 5 feet tall in the corner of the room. And he would jack up Welcome to the Jungle at ear-splitting decibels and just rock out. And I'd be like, no, and then eventually you're like, yes, thank you. All right. All right, this is Devin Tuck. Tuck that thing in. Thank you, Devin. Big fan of you. Thank you for being here. Yo, BC, what do you think of Rampage's resurgence of internet fame? And how about Bear? There will be a subreddit on Bear soon. Much love. I would assume there would be. Bear seems to step in and out of controversies. Now, I don't watch the Jackson podcast, but I've got to give them credit. Like I saw that the World MMA Awards came out for best MMA programming. MK not nominated. That's more than fine. We've been trying to rebuild, but I saw that Jackson got in there and got a push. And I got to give them credit for a podcast I don't follow or listen to. You see a lot of big names and you see a lot of clips constantly, going around, and it's hard to avoid it. You got to pick on it. You got to tune in on what's going on there on some of those viral ones. I guess I'm happy for Rampage that he's sort of finding his post-career niche, because, our enduring memories of Fat Rampage fighting Fedor for a paycheck in across the globe wasn't that fun. So yeah, it's fun because Rampage always has a fun personality. He's always on the borderline of being canceled or being out of control, but you can't really get canceled in MMA. So Bear seems interesting. I don't really know the full dynamics of that show or the chains that sponsor it, but yeah, we'll leave it at that. I like to see Rampage, though, getting a new, because it's surprising to me how quickly UFC champion stars, when they sort of go. Like even someone like GSP, who's still uber famous, still so many old school fans are like, man, I haven't loved it since GSP left. But it's like how quickly this fan base just reloads and comes in with new people. And, UFC doesn't always tell their history aggressively on a regular basis. Like, you're not flashing back a lot on UFC broadcasts. It's always about what's next. And if that, I understand that philosophy, but it's weird how quickly, what percentage of this, for example, what percentage of today's MMA fan base, which is aggressively young, didn't watch John Jones's light heavyweight rise, where he's fighting all these former champions, Rashad, Rampage, Machida, like who missed that? Because suddenly that's 13 years ago. Right. So it is wild how that goes. But yeah, I've always been a big fan of Rampage. I did go to some weird Bellator media day once in right outside of LA at the Viacom office, where I went with Okamoto, and when we were working at ESPN, and I remember we walked up to Rampage to interview him, and he's like, "Is that you, Brett? I'm not talking to you today." It was weird. So then I tried to do the interview, and he was like, "You're with Brett, right? I'm not talking to him today." I don't know what the deal with that was. John Jones did that once too at ESPN in Bristol, and I had to interview John Jones. It was right after one of his like real controversial moments, and he had the what was that lady's name? The handler that he had with her. What was he? Was she the fixer? He had the fixer with her. Yeah. And it was like, yeah, we're not talking to Brett right now. But hey, shout out to Brett. He's been with ESPN for like a couple decades, it feels like now. All right. Damn. Chinchilla, BCX is my favorite 2 hours of YouTube. Oh, wow. Appreciate that. I mean, look, I got a limited pool of stories and references I can make here, but if it aligns with your non-negotiables, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right. Let's keep it flowing from our boy Max Martinez, Maximiliano here at UFC 319. And thank you, Max, for being so kind. I sat next to Suzur Kayev's manager. Just 2 weeks ago, Kayev had a fight fall through and was working for a moving company. Now he's in the UFC. Crazy how fast the sport moves. Yes, it is always crazy for me in boxing or MMA, but it seems like it's more of a deal in MMA. Well, no, boxing really, boxers don't get paid a lot on the lower levels, but when they go from that transition to I'm climbing the ranks, yet I have this full-time job. You know how many fighters, when I would do Showbox, which was the Prospect series on Showtime, that we'd be talking to and be like, yeah, full-time, I get up for work every day at 4:30 and I'm doing some physical labor and then I'm going to the gym. Like I have so much respect for those guys who are on the verge of trying to make that crossover, to make enough money to make a living out of this and being able to afford the training camps and being able to actually go all in. It is wild how the sport moves. There's no doubt about that. It's wild that dude fought on the Contender Series on Tuesday and then UFC 319 on Saturday. And now suddenly he might get some kind of big push. It is crazy how it goes. So it goes. All right. Yo Mama 69. That's an interesting tagline right there. Wow. But thank you for your support of the show. BC, your fave build up to a boxing fight you ever cover? Great question. Wonderful question, actually. All right. So I would have covered this fight, which I assume means I covered it in person, right? And I assume that also means in the lead up, I probably interviewed both fighters, wrote a preview, wrote a column. Yeah, that kind of stuff. All right. My knee-jerk answer would be Canelo versus Floyd, but it's not for the build-up or any kind of tension between them. It's just for, as I've said before many times, it was my first Vegas fight in 2013. It's where I talked to Luke for the first time on the grounds. They're covering it. And it was first super fight boxing had in 6 years. And it really was like something I had never experienced, of just boxing coming together and being awesome. And it wasn't this niche thing that I love at home and have no friends to talk to about it. It was like, this is the Super Bowl of boxing, but that wasn't a real build in that traditional sense, right? I didn't end up going to Pacquiao, De La Hoya versus Floyd. That was my wedding night in the end, but good Lord, was that build incredible. But I wasn't covering boxing at that point. I was at ESPN, but not covering boxing. What was just a great build up. Oh, dude, I'll say it right now. The Caleb Plant, David Benavidez build, where I was lucky enough to, I did the press conference interviews the weigh-in interviews on the stage. I hosted the press conference stream, had such a big hand that fight week on the ground for Showtime, interviewed both guys ahead of it, wrote preview stories for CBS Sports. And just the back and forth trash talk and the mind games Caleb Plant attempted to have. And the fact that there really wasn't a real beef between them, but Caleb Plant kept stirring the pot, and you could see that monster starting to come out of Benavidez. Caleb Plant buying davidbenavidez.com and making it a Caleb Plant merch site. I thought that was one of the best builds, even though that fight, wasn't for a title. It was a pay-per-view main event. It was the continuing coming out party for Benavidez as a star, but it was just so well promoted, and the two of them particularly just really worked their backside off to make that fight an interesting story. And and it turned out to be more one-sided than not, and I still don't know how Caleb went the distance on there, but that would be up there. And then if we're just talking about prestige, I have to see what it looks like, the magic that was in the air for Triple G Canelo 1. Obviously 2 was the same thing, but Triple G Canelo 1, the just meeting of these two powers colliding, wasn't a big trash talk build. There was a little more trash talk in the second fight because of the failed drug tests from Canelo in between. But that first fight, and HBO was doing that and being on the grounds that fight week. And man, that was something huge and special. And during the beginning period of when pay-per-view started to die and illegal streaming ramped up, that fight still produced over 1 million buys, and it played out like a super fight and was controversy at the end and all that stuff. But you remember those memorable builds where you are so jacked up and just being there, being a part of it. Just, oh my God. I remember just waking up the morning of that fight, and the fan in me just being like, I am the most blessed person in the world to get to do this, right? This is crazy. So there you go. There it is, Yo Mama. Talking about mime. All right, enough of that. Okay. Also from Yo Mama, thank you, sir. 69. Interesting. Very interesting. Sad Adonis Stevenson never fought B-Hop or Kovalev. Yeah, I mean, that's a big miss. That's one of the biggest Cold War misses for boxing. That while Kovalev was, pound for pound and a big champion for main events fighting on HBO, and Adonis Stevenson was on Showtime and a PBC guy, really before PBC even launched, but that's a fight that should have happened. Now, it probably at that point could not have been a pay-per-view because it wouldn't have made the money to justify it. I don't think. Maybe it could have been at that point. But the fact that we didn't end up getting that when they were the 1 and 2 light heavyweights in the world and huge knockout artists, that sucked. Adonis never fought B-Hop. Yeah, that is interesting. I think B-Hop I don't think he was at 75 at that point. And by the time he moved up to 75 to fight Kovalev, am I wrong on that? Yeah, because Hopkins was still fighting at 68 against Pascal in the rematch that was 75 too. Okay, so that was light heavyweight. Maybe it was more of a side of the street thing because Hopkins at that point was more HBO aligned. Either way, yes, we didn't get those breakthrough fights. Adonis still had, a pretty damn good career. became the lineal champion, knocking out Chad Dawson in round 1. Yes, has that sketchy backstory where he did time. Yes, had the unfortunate sort of medical condition that ended his career in the stroke, I believe, and all that. But he seems to be doing well today. He was fun while he lasted. Believe that. Quick, powerful southpaw. All right. Long Island Luke, when are we getting the BCX music podcast? It's coming. But when I say look, when I say anything's coming, I mean, let me sort out the next few months. All right. Let me see where my career is heading with this big change with the UFC rights. Let me see what my time is going to be. It's hard for me to launch things when I'm not sure I can pull it off. That's a big, it's a big part of me always wanting to do things like the right way. Like I don't love that year 1 of the BCX has been kind of stop and start, hot and cold, busy, not busy, but it's the realities of life. All right. That's where we're at. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, tell me I'm wrong, Harden. You're right. I'm right. Harden's old school. This guy, old school fan, upstate New York, right? Like old school fan. Dude, Hopkins was fighting at 75 since the mid 2000s. Yeah, I was dead wrong. All right, I was dead wrong on that. Thank you very much. You're right. Who did he actually move up for? Was it Tarver? I think it was. You're right. I got in my head there. Okay. Back to Yo Mama again. 69. Thank you, sir, for these grand contributions. Here's my opinion on Jake Tank. I don't like the fight happening, at least fight in the US and not on pay-per-view. It's not on pay-per-view and it is in the US. I think Tank will just go for big money fights, which he feels that way, then go for it. Tank pack soon. I mean, yeah, tell me, I don't know. I know everyone hasn't loved this fight. And I've pitched the idea of Tank and Pacquiao years ago as like sort of the fight to launch Tank to the masses, maybe in some ways the same way that De La Hoya Pacquiao did, where yes, Pacquiao was already known in boxing and a big star, but that super launched him to the masses. I really feel like in December, that could have been the fight. With Pacquiao back right now, Tank moving up to welterweight for this one. Pac said he'd be willing to come down to 145. Sucks. But your opinion is you don't like the fight happening. Yeah, at least, okay, I see what you're saying. You're saying at least the fight is in the US and not on pay-per-view. Very true. I mean, look, it's kind of like an NBA All-Star game type fight to me. It's going to be fought at some level of contention. I mean, will it turn into a real fight? Maybe, but I don't know. I'm sick of, I hate it. I hate it. I'm sorry. I absolutely hate it. Sorry, I hit the wrong button there. And yes, Harden, born and raised in central New York. Yeah, shout out to that region right there. All right. What are we talking about? Like Cooperstown? What are we talking about? Anianta, Verona? Yeah, shout out to that area. My wife has relatives in the Rochester area. So you better believe that I've been effing around with garbage plates. Okay. You better believe that. Garbage plates are just the most intense, ridiculous piece of drunk food that they ever came up with. It's great. All right. Thank you, Nikki V, for supporting that. Plant versus Benavidez was an incredible build. There's nothing. I mean, I'm talking, I'm talking to this man like I'm talking to this man. There's nothing like covering the intensity of a big fight on the ground and having some part of it. Maybe that part of it is, like I used to do with Showtime, hosting streams or whatever. Or I think for Plant Canelo, they brought me up during the press conference to ask questions to both fighters. There's just something, I mean, it's a responsibility I take seriously, but when you feel like you are a part of the narrative, maybe you have a big interview with one of the fighters leading in it, the fan in you just, you want to lose yourself, mom spaghetti, all that stuff. Thank you. Oh, Harden in the house, Syracuse represent. Those are some tough winners out there, but they, that produces tough people. All right, let's put it in drive time right here. All right. Oh, what do you guys do up there, Harden? We do salt, potatoes, and greasy pizza. Yeah, well, I definitely, I don't know much about salt potatoes, but I'll get in with you on the greasy pizza. That's, Greek style pizza is how I've grown up and lived my life. There we go. There's a great one near here. My wife hates eating there because it's so damn greasy, but it reminds me of the pizza I grew up on. It's a family from Ecuador. They're making this Greek style amazing. I mean, when I get the pineapple and meatball from there, got that on my birthday. It'll change your life. It really will. All right. What do we got here from Tobias Reaper? I just met her. What are the 3 quintessential Pacquiao performances? The ones you recommended to someone who's never seen him fight. Also, Pacquiao Larios is slept on. Yeah, that is slept on. I mean, that whole run of Manny is a thing to behold, without question. All right, Tobias, what are the 3 quintessential Pacquiao performances? Number 1, without question, the one-sided dismantling of Marco Antonio Barrera in their first meeting in 2003 in San Antonio. That still just, I marvel at to this day, how he walked in there, didn't even have a right hand, had no fear trunks and the blonde tips, and just walked through a battle-tested, world-renowned badass, future Hall of Famer. That's one. Number 2, obviously you can pick, any parts of the Pacquiao Marquez. I'm sorry, the Pacquiao Marquez. Yeah, sorry, Juan Manuel Marquez rivalry. I mean, obviously the fourth one, he got sent to hell, which is the best and most insane fight of the 4. And the first one is wild too, obviously, because he knocked down Marquez 3 times in round 1, and that fight ends up a draw. But I think that second performance against Marquez, the fight number 2, like, it might actually be peak Pacquiao. And I know people are going to say, nah, BC. The Pacquiao from De La Hoya through Hatton through Cotto, that's peak Pacquiao. That's freak peak Pacquiao. But I really feel like the second Marquez fight was like, the Eric Morales rivalry, that incredible trilogy, I think really forced Manny to elevate his game to another level. And I think we saw the first mountaintop in that really close fight in the second Marquez fight. But I mean, if I'm going to add that on this list of 3, then I'm going to have to leave out too much. So let me go Barrera. Yeah, I got to drop this Marquez fight, because you got to go Ricky Hatton, because that really is the peak of how dangerous that version of Pacquiao coming up to 140 and eventually welterweight was. And yeah, it was a Hatton who had been, lost to and kind of exposed by Floyd, and soon would walk away from the sport and didn't move his head enough and walked into those shots. But you're just like, damn, that's dynamic. If I'm not going to put the second Marquez fight in my 3rd spot, I got to go Cotto. I got to do it, and I wanted to say, yeah, thank you, Mama, you're right, versus Cotto. And I wanted to say here that, like, I think the Thurman performance at age 40 should be up there in that split decision win, because that was such a tough version of Thurman that he beat, and he was 40 and damn near won fighter of the year. But the first Barrera fight, Ricky Hatton, and then Miguel Cotto, in the Cotto fight, let's never forget, for 4 rounds, it was back and forth. It was the Hagler Hearns at welterweight. They were both in it against each other. Like, they both were throwing all just a slugfest at the highest level. And then that turned into just a downhill, one-sided dismantling. But the fact that he was able to go up to welterweight, fight a Cotto who was still, yes, a post-Margarito 1 Cotto, but a Cotto who was still dangerous in there, and got through, had his eardrum busted and got through that to dominate. I mean, that will never, I don't know if we'll ever see someone like the Pacquiao that was from the De La Hoya Hatton. If you're really David Diaz, De La Hoya, Hatton, and Cotto, that stretch is just mind-blowing. But respect to the Pacquiao from the second Marquez fight, because that's when he put Manila Ice together. That's when the right hand is there with the left hand. I mean, he showed that flashes of that in the incredible Eric Morales trilogy. I am all over the place in my brain. Sorry about that. All right. But as Steven says here, Pacquiao's career is so hard to pick. There's so many eras. There's so many levels. Could you say the Ledwaba fight that put him on the map and he won the title with he easily could say that. All right. Where's Harden? You were talking to me about salt potatoes. Salt potatoes. They are awesome. Get some Henner Waddles potatoes and enjoy. Wow. That sounds like extreme central New York talk right there. You going to Wegmans to get those potatoes or what, brother? All right, let's go. I think, Harden, didn't you used to be on my like ESPN.com chats back in the day? Were you that same guy too? I think so. The Saved by the Boxing chats. Yeah, there we go. Good stuff. Harden's back with Pacquiao's life story is a fairy tale that is only possible in boxing. Yeah, damn right. Bernard Hopkins' life too. George Foreman's life too. I mean, that's why I love this game. You know what I mean? Like the ability to go from nothing, or in Dwight Muhammad Qawi's life, go to prison, learned boxing in prison, watching, James Scott fight from Rahway, literally in Rahway, and then go on to the career he had. It's wild. It's wild. Wegmans in the house. Yes, my wife's late grandfather made the daily trip to Wegmans and loved not tipping at diners. He was a man after my own heart. All right, we both got talkings too by my wife. Like, yeah. I was raised cheap. I'm sorry about that. All right. I'm trying to do better these days. I've been tipping a lot on haircuts. Haircuts is the thing I'll tip you a lot. You do it right. All right. Yeah, let's go. Okay. Great question, by the way, Tobias. All right. We got to go in rapid fire mode. I know I've been saying that. I got about 10 minutes left. Let's go. No more new questions. Here we go. Let's bang. Cosmo, what will be the legacy for influencer boxing? It proves that boxing is this thing that whether you're talking about the best fighters of all time, the champions of your era, or just really popular people, the world's going to stop and people are going to watch it. All right. Oh, I hit the wrong button there. Damn it. Brody, sorry about that. You've never been to prison, but I've been to jail. I don't think it made me a better fighter. Brody, you did time? Did I just leak that to the world? I don't know. All right. I know Harden, always tip. I know I'm back. I'm back now. Okay. I'm back. All right. I just grew up with, in a dirtbag town. What were you saying, Harden? Yes, I am a veteran from the ESPN chats of yours and Dan Rayfield. I remember that. Thank you. Good times back then. All right. Back to where we were. Legacy of influencer boxing. I think it just shows that if you're someone like Jake Paul, who actually had the balls to take this super seriously and go for it, and you have this new generation following like he has, you can go. He's gone really far. We can critique a lot of the Jake Paul experience, but he's gone really far. He's taken the sport seriously, even if his matchmaking hasn't always been. And he, from a promoter standpoint, is actually doing very important things. So Jake Paul the Paul brothers have to be a big part of the story of influencer boxing, but it's something that, it's like a balloon. It's going to run out of air. I can't believe they've extended the balloon this long, but it can't live forever when the quality of fights is low. Yes, you can get people through the door with this grudge match. Like Misfits Boxing does a great job with that. We got like Luke Rockhold and Darren Till, and Dylan Dennis and all this crap. Like you can get people in the building, but if the quality of if the fights aren't quality, or if they aren't brawls with a knockout that, that cements it, it's going to hard to be sustained. Jake's tried every trick to sustain this, and he's done a pretty good job at it, but it's void of true value. It's like empty calories, as Luke Thomas would say. That to me is the legacy of it. But it also shows again that boxing is a sport that everybody wants to love if it can get its shit together, because they're willing to watch celebrities do it. They're willing to watch anybody do it. It's the fight game. It's unbelievable. I love this editorial from Harden. Harden DR, Dr. Harden. The U.S. should not have tipping, but that is where we are now. Yeah, I do love when you go to the UK and you're not expected to. When Luke Thomas told me that, I was like, for real? This is right in my wheelhouse. All right. No, seriously, Luke's trying to get me to tip more on the hotel. I never was raised that you tip the person cleaning your room at the hotel. Now I know. Okay, knowing is half the battle. All right, let's take these final four home. Here we go. J Ray, thank you, bro, as always. If my employee, I may fire, what are you, an HR guy, soon tries to fight me in the parking lot, do I send you a phone recording of the footage for DMs for donks, or in your have you seen this shit? Definitely a have you seen this shit thing. All right, definitely. No, it's got to be a have you seen this shit. Yes. So please DM me you getting attacked by the person you just fired. That is hilarious and wild. What line of work you in, J Ray? Strip club bouncer? That's interesting. Okay, that's great. All right. There we go. Also, yeah, we hit that already. Thank you, Yo Mama. Also from Sleeto. I like this guy, right? Big Sleeto fan. Sleeto from Toledo. Good morning, BC. Good morning to you too. Question: will you be next to feature on the cover of Rewinded Hair Color for Men? It drives me nuts that people don't hire Callan after what he did. Love you, bro. Love you. Yeah, love you right back at you. Yeah, I mean, dude, that would be so awesome if I somehow could work connections. Maybe I'll talk to Berlanga to talk to Fat Joe and be like, yo, put me on the box. We didn't, Shab and I don't even have to show up to the same set. We can green screen that. Imagine like, two guys like, yeah, look at our hair, man. Yeah. I mean, look at how young this makes me look and feel. I mean, look, there's something to that. When I don't get the fade every 2 weeks and it's grays coming out and I sit down in that barber chair, I feel, 55. And then the second they're done with that fade, I got energy that day. It's a placebo thing, but it works, man. It really does. And I'm not about like, there's a limit to me in what I care about or feel other people should care about, from plastic surgery to Botox and all this other weird stuff. I guess I will go as far for my career to try to stay young. Not that it really matters, but Todd Grisham told me you got to go salt and pepper. Bruce Buffer told him the ladies love it, and he says it's true, but I'm a one woman man. All right. My wife's just like, yo, find some consistency. All right. Don't be gray one week and not gray the next. I'm working on it. All right. I'm an open book. I live right here. All right. We're going to wrap up with this one. A real Peaches Delight. Thank you, Sandu, for playing. Do we have one more here? Brody's got one more I starred from radio. Let's talk Radiohead. What are some of your favorite songs, BC? They used Reckoner off of In Rainbows on an episode of Pacquiao Marcus 20. Did they? I was not into that album at that point. I need to go back and look at that. Damn. Yes, that is such a great tune. I mentioned earlier National Anthem. I mentioned let me tell you. I'll tell you right now. Hold on. Let's do this right here. There we go. Let's nail this. Okay. I know it's super popular, but Paranoid Android, without question, you put that on, you're ready to rock and get gnarly. So that one is up there big for me. So is Let Down. Let Down is a monster BC loving Radiohead song. Let me go to the Bends and tell you, definitely High and Dry off of the Bends. I mean, that's one of, that to me, that's the Radiohead style that they became. And they showed it in this alternative, great all-time great album of the Bends, but it was sort of like a tease of where they were going. So definitely High and Dry. Let me just poke around one more time here. We got OK Computer. And then you get into Kid A, where we've got National Anthem, which changed my life in so many ways with Radiohead. Idiotech, that does move me just the same. I mean, even Everything in Its Right Place off that just sets the mood so damn much. I love it. I'm gonna, it's about time I learned the names of the In Rainbow songs, so I'm a little more educated on here. I took a pause on my full-on Radiohead deep dive, but it's time to get back in. All right, it's time to get back in. So that's the story for this week. All right, I got to go interview Paul Hughes. So check that out coming up on the BCX. Thank you for playing. It's been a fun 2 hours this morning, chatting music, chatting life, chatting fights with you. I didn't even publicize this, and you guys still showed up. I appreciate that. That's all I got for you today. But more to come. Check us out on MK tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. How about we do the morningcombat.shop? You want some merch? Check it out, okay? We got good shit. We do. We really do. And as you already know, all the proceeds go to LIL, LT, and BC, and that's very appreciated. So peace, and we out of here. You want one more, Carol? Yeah, you probably do. Let's hit it.
It's personal, whatever you want to do to bond. We may cut this out later. No. Are you? Good.
No.
All right, switch places. You have 11 points. Congratulations on that.
I mean, what a time, right? What a time to be alive. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? The best outro in all of podcasting is about to hit you. Thank you to Anthony and Jacob from the fantastic Nebraska jam band Head Change. You can follow them on Instagram and check out what they're up to. Big Grateful Dead fans, those guys. Here's the BC outro. Peace. Take care of yourselves. Thank you.